I will call to order the regular meeting of the Lancaster Select Board for Monday, February 6th, 2023. Record crowd in this room. Well, actually not record, sorry. We had a really big crowd from the ponds not that long ago, but thank you all for coming. I want to start and we're going to discuss the special town meeting more a little later, but I wanted to start just from a place of gratitude for all who participated in the process that we had at the special town meeting, regardless of the side that you're on. The issues that we discussed there and many times before that are really important to the future of our town, and I appreciate that folks treated it with the gravity that required, respected each other in the process. I want to thank the town administrator and all of the staff. I see the chief of police on here, and I'm assuming the fire chief somewhere. Everybody who did really incredible work to pull off the largest town meeting since I've been able to vote. There was one in 1988 that had 1,028 people for the, many of you all remember the incinerator debate of 1988. But it was an incredible task and done incredibly well. And so I just wanted to start from a position of thanks to the town employees who did it, but for the town's people who showed up to participate in what is, even though it seems imperfect at times, the most pure form of democracy, which is the open town meeting, which we are lucky to have here in Lancaster. So, with that, I think I have burned enough time to get to the scheduled hearing, and I have not. So, we will go back to the first item on the agenda is the review and approval of the Select Board's meeting minutes from January 3rd, 2023.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can we open the meeting with a roll call vote?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, Jason. When you're not here, I get lost in the shuffle. Welcome aboard, everybody. By the way, this meeting is recorded and being broadcast on Sterling-Lancaster television. We will do a roll call of our board. Jason Allison. Now everyone's going to miss my nice thank yous at the beginning. Alex Turner is here.
Here.
And Steve Kerrigan is here. Thank you, Jason. Do you have anything else you'd like to say? Like a motion to, like a motion to approve the minutes?
I will offer that motion.
Apparently not. Oh, got it, okay.
I'll offer that motion.
Okay, and since Jason, I believe, is running through an airport somewhere, I will second the motion. All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Steve, there was one addition in the scheduled appearances. I had asked about the two-stage process, which we just need that there, that they can have two votes. One is here at ballot, the superintendent.
What are you talking about? Can you tell us what part of the minutes you're talking about?
Scheduled appearances, public hearings, the school superintendent. I'd asked a question which the superintendent was answered well, and they clarified that there will be, if need be,
Number 3?
section 3, I would say paragraph 2. I had asked Superintendent Downing, and he responded that there could be two stages. First being a simple town meeting vote, and second being a ballot.
Okay. So if you're going to make an amendment to the minutes,
That's the amendment.
can you write it down so we can have it? I don't.
Sure.
Which also, you made a motion to approve the minutes, not to amend the minutes. So we're in the middle of that motion.
Yes. And
So we have to vote on that.
Okay, then I vote no and amend them?
Yeah.
I was doing it during the
And
discussion.
I would just ask, is it a substantive enough change that we need to revise the minutes, or can we just reflect it as a note attached to the minutes?
Can I offer a motion during discussion to amend?
I don't believe so, but you can if you'd like. You'll get no objection from me.
Okay, it's simple.
Can you just read out the motion? And exactly where it goes.
Section 3, paragraph 2, to begin. ALS asked Superintendent Downing about the two-stage process to approve project. He responded, first was a town meeting vote, second could be a district-wide ballot held in Neshoba.
Well, that's not
That is not,
entirely accurate, yeah.
because it's for the debt.
Yeah,
not
it's for the,
project.
right. It's not about
Okay.
approving the project, it's about, we vote on the debt to the project.
Okay.
Yeah.
As
So,
long as it gets reflected in there so people understand if they look back, it's fine.
but I want to remind everybody listening, minutes are minutes, they're summaries of things, not transcripts of things. So
Right.
if
I
we,
believe
if
it's
you have
fine.
because that amendment wouldn't be accurate to what was said at the meeting.
Okay. If
So
we
you're
pass it to
proposing an
Kate-
inaccurate
No,
amendment?
we can change, we can either hold them or change them to reflect the accurate statement that you're,
I'm confused as to what you're offering.
my offer was to amend the minutes to reflect what was said in an accurate manner. So why don't, what method would you prefer? Would you like to
I would
just?
prefer if you had an amendment to the minutes, if we had known about it prior to the meeting, so we could have had the wording done. But what we can do is have a vote on approving the minutes. We can,
Okay, let's approve the minutes and we can amend them at the next time. It's fine?
we can either we have to have a vote on the motion
Yes.
pending. Is there any further discussion on the minutes?
Phew. No.
Jason?
I don't have any discussion on the current motion.
Okay. All right. All in favor of approving the minutes indicate by saying aye. Jason?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Steve? Aye. The minutes are approved, 3-0-0. Okay. Now we've burned enough time to get to the hearing. All right. Now we have before us a hearing for the notice of, for the application for special permit to remove earth products renewal. Is there a motion to open the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, and then we'll read the motion, read the actual renewal, or the notice rather. Jason?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Steve? Aye. Okay. Alex,
Would
you
you
be
like
so
me to
kind as-
offer a
yes.
motion with the?
Could you please read the notice?
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held Monday, February 6th, 2023 at 6:05 PM to consider the application of Fort Pond LLC, care of W.J. Graves Construction Incorporated, 192 Depot Road, East Templeton, Mass., for the renewal of a special permit to remove earth products, overburden, rock, gravel, loam, from a parcel of land 450 Fort Pond Road, Lancaster, Mass., map 5, parcel 26B. Location approximately 800 feet east from the intersection with the Fort Pond Inn Road. A copy of the application and engineering plans may be viewed in the Select Board's office, Prescott Building, 701 Main Street, Lancaster, Mass., between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m., Monday through Thursday. All persons interested in providing comment should attend and be heard.
Okay. The hearing is open. So we turn to, Oh.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I just want to bring to your attention that there are two members of Ty and Bond who are on the Zoom
Fantastic.
meeting, if there's any questions.
thank you. So we'll turn it over to you, sir. Please take the podium, identify yourself, and off you go.
My name is Mika Lasala. I'm from S. Chamberlain Engineering, here on behalf of the applicant. On Realty, I'll spin this, so you can probably pull up the PDF on the screen for the people that are,
And we have it in our packet, so you shouldn't, don't worry about us.
don't worry about what.
We have it in our packet.
Okay,
so.
all right. I just want to give a quick overview, because that was one of the questions I believe that some of the public had at the previous January meeting as to, what's going on with earth removal in town. Fort Pond LLC currently owns 78 acres, kind of this property here in the green. And currently, actually, it's probably best if I do it this way. I'll go to this. This is what's actually there right now. Probably the best. Currently, outlined in faint red, you can see the edge of the image is what they currently own, minus they don't own the area with the existing Rockport well or Red Whitney well is. Currently, They are seeking renewal of the earth removal permit to continue their mining operation in the back portion of the property and also continue some cleanup along the edges of the property. The original permit in 2011 was for 1.7 million cubic yards of material to be removed. And every 2 years, they have renewed that permit. Back in 2014, with the sales tax holiday that Governor Patrick put before in August of 2014, they renewed, all permits were extended 2 years, and subsequently 2 years later, it was done again. So this original permit was extended to 6 years from the original two-year permit. Subsequent to that, in 2017, we sought renewal for the permit. 2019, subsequently also sought renewal, and then COVID hit, and with the state of emergency, all permits were extended 462 days, which pushed the permit to January 24th, and we sought renewal of the permit end of last year, and that's where we are today. And in the past, all the other earth removal renewals for this project and also for the abutting surrounding earth removal projects have always been renewed by the Board of Selectmen. We always requested that a simple renewal through the board versus having an open public hearing, but with changes of personnel, staff, everybody, there was a question as to what's going on, what are we doing, why, and so that's what we did. Subsequent to them, when we permitted this initially, it was in 5-acre phases each, and we had it divided into 10 phases. Of the 70 acres, 48 was open to earth removal. And subsequent to that, an additional permit was obtained from the planning board to keep 10 acres open for material stockpiling and processing of the, as they're mining and overburden and just for storage of equipment and such. Subsequent to that, the applicant sought interest from a solar company. I think it's Pope Solar, if I'm correct, was the name of the company. They have, since they completed most of the project, they have gone into a lease agreement for 40 years to have 20 acres for solar panels, and that's currently out there constructed. The remaining properties that require earth removal, again, is in the back, which is underway, and then a portion here. There's been negotiations with budding property owners with development that they're seeking to do, and it's still in negotiations, nothing's set in stone. So the applicant has held off taking material here and completing the earth removal in the back portion of the property, kind of in lieu of waiting to see what happens. But in the meantime, we've sought to keep our permits alive should things fall through, that they can then continue on the property that they currently own. And that's really kind of in a nutshell. From a yardage perspective, we're approximately 250,000 yards remaining, give or take. And should any of these landowner swaps occur, exchanges of property, we'd have to be before the board again to modify the permit into whatever areas and define the grading and such.
Okay, I appreciate it. Anything else from your side? Okay, it's a very good summary, thank you. I just asked Ty and Bond if there's anything if you can identify yourself. I know you recently were taking a look. Your report is in the packet.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, this is Kayla Larson from Ty and Bond. For those who don't know, Ty and Bond is a third-party consultant hired by the town to inspect the Fort Pond site, both on a quarterly basis and to review these application renewals every 2 years. So we haven't noted anything in our recent visits out to the site that show that the applicant is not complying with their existing permit. And they've been well under the volumes that are required to be removed, the maximum truck volumes set in the permit. The site has been mostly, as you can see, taken over by solar panels in the middle where the earth removal had been completed and the site had been restored. In reviewing the application submitted by S.J. Mulaney, we had requested that this plan be updated, which they complied with, and you can see before you now, to show the most current conditions and their plans. They meet the number of wells on site that are required for the acreage that's open. If they continued to open more acreage, more wells are stipulated in the permit that would need to be installed. We haven't had any trouble with dust control or stormwater erosion on the site. We leave it up to the town as to the request for whether each permit renewal would need to go through a public hearing versus just the board's review. That's your decision. So we see no issues with renewing the permit in the state that it's in.
Thank you very much, Kayla. Appreciate it.
Of course,
We'll ask you to stick around in case there's questions, which I'm sure there will be.
certainly.
Thank you.
Should I start the share?
Do folks want the share still up, or can we go back to our box of people? I say we go back to our box of people. We can always,
Easier to see if
yeah.
anyone's raising.
there we go. So before we go to any public comment, I'd ask the board, starting with the one who's not in the room, Mr. Allison, if you have any questions, and then I'll go to Ms. Turner and then myself, although my time will be brief. Jason, you got anything?
Mr. Chair, nope, Mr. Chair, I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. He wins the record for the day of the shortest questions.
That's true.
Ms. Turner? She's going to compete for second.
Yeah, that's it. First, thank you for the presentation. It was great. And by all accounts, I hear that this is a very well-run site. I've been saying. So I do have questions based on the report of Ty and Bond and some of the others. I know it's been quite a while, so some of my questions may go back a ways. Based on, and
These
Kayla,
questions are for Caleb?
yeah,
Okay.
Kayla, based on your report, or based on the report, it's actually yours and Tony's report. Your recap was a little bit different than what I read. It looks like that there are a series of monitoring wells. You mentioned 2 verbally, but there's a list of, it looks like 8. Some of which looks like they have been removed, but some of which you noted should be repaired. Phase X1, well MW2A, and so on, that they were not in the proper positions to actually monitor the groundwater. Is there anything to add to that from what I read, or?
Certainly. Yeah, so the permit stipulates that there be 2 wells for every 6 acres, and you can see the well IDs in the report correspond to their phases. There are some phases that are inactive right by the roadway. That's one of the wells that referenced as too shallow to reach groundwater. So if that area becomes active again, we would that's definitely one of the things that we would call out to be made more accessible to measure that groundwater. For the ones that are in active areas, there was one that we noted in some of our reports in 2022 that had been damaged, I believe hit by potentially a construction truck, and has since been repaired, but we did get a shallow reading on it, so we want to watch that and check it in the spring and see if that's something that needs to be repaired.
So my understanding from reading the maps that were submitted is that you're asking for a renewal for the whole area, active or inactive, or is it a smaller parcel that the permit is for, and I didn't read the map accurately?
It's for the entire parcel. I mean, there's
Okay.
cleanup that needs to be done depending on
It's usually the way people do
what
it.
the property owners, like I said, there's a question about what's going on next door. There's a
Sure.
question what's gonna happen here, so I can't isolate it to just one
Right.
spot.
And I wouldn't expect, usually
Okay.
people do the
Yeah.
whole area that they want.
And we've left, the YMCA folks requested additional buffering, which they've left there that potentially could be removed at some point with probably negotiations with them. But the original permit had additional material coming off, the YMCA side. But with the improvements that they had done on their property, they requested that we leave some of the tree buffer and the earthen berm in place.
So that reason I asked was because it looked like your permit application was comprehensive. It was pretty much for the whole site.
Yeah.
And Kayla, when you were talking about active, inactive areas, so we need to assume that when they, whatever they decide to do, depending on what negotiations happen with your customers and so on, that we should be permitting looking at the full site, and the wells should be reflective of that, not just the areas that are currently, because I'm assuming you're asking for a
Well, the-
permit to continue.
Well, the area that's
Expand.
underneath the solar panel ultimately
Right.
is that's really the part that, there's 20 acres right in the middle here.
Yep.
That's inactive.
Solar, yeah,
And it overlaps some of the original phase lines that we had.
right.
So, I mean, I can't,
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? Were there wells monitoring underneath where the cell phones are? So it'd be,
yes.
so it'd be
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
impractical for you to make sure every well on inactive parts are, if you're not using that site, then we can't.
We're not going any lower in that area. The pan for 40 years, there's, nothing's gonna happen there.
Right, yeah, they're noted on here.
Right, no,
They
it's
were-
just to make the point that if it's inactive, it's inactive, and when it becomes active, or you plan to become active, then to Kayla's point, we have to bring the wells up to standard.
But like the wells up by the street and so on, in an active area that may, or the buffer that you spoke about with the Y, may actually, depending on your negotiations, you may want to mine them or not.
Well, the street part's inactive, yes?
Yeah, right along
Right
the
now it
entranceway.
is,
Yeah.
but we're gonna permit allow it.
No,
so.
well, yeah, it'll allow them also to keep removing under the solar panels, but they're not gonna do
Well, we can exclude that if we want to, that's done. You can't get any further.
You're not,
It's
yeah,
down
you're
to
not
ground-
gonna
it's down to
alter the grade in
groundwater.
the
that.
solar
I guess my point, at some point, we have to, if it's an inactive part of the property, it's an inactive, I mean, we hire Ty and Bond to give us a recommendation on.
Well, Kayla could speak to this, but, so everything
She
is in
did.
that, and anything, even the tree area, that right now that you're just talked about negotiating with a Y, should you choose to cut down those trees, it's currently inactive, but should you choose to cut down those trees and mine them, it would become active, so that permit is covered in what we're doing
But
right
the
now.
permit requires that if it becomes active, they need to have the wells that, right, Kayla?
Active portions,
Yeah,
two
so
per 6
the
acres.
permit itself envisions if you move from inactive to active, and what standards need
It's
to
an
be met.
evolving, yes. And the phasing was just to keep the site stable so you don't have a large dust bowl. So that's really the intent of the phasing from an erosion perspective.
Management perspective.
Right. Now, when you were, and I trust that things change, because we had stipulated the area, ways that things should be reclaimed, but things are reclaimed differently under solar panels than they are
Correct.
in the plan. So the initial permit talked about reseeding and trees and so on, which you wouldn't want to put under a solar array.
Correct. And the shading,
So-
and the shadowing that occurs if you,
Correct, correct. So, so there was discussion on page 2 and 3 of Time Bond's report about wells that needed to be done. There's also quarterly reports. I see one, the last quarterly report I saw, but I haven't seen the other years of them. Do you have those, and can you give them to us, Kayla?
Yes, absolutely. We can send over prior reports for any that you're missing.
Okay, that would be great.
We're not missing, they're in the planning office.
No, there, okay. Is it-
You're all set, Kayla.
There's also a discussion of an earthen berm that was constructed from stripped topsoil. And you talked about that facing the athletic field. Could you just talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So that, I think, is also within that area that Michael was pointing out between the YMCA side of the site. So that side of the site is bermed up so that if any wind came across the site, it wouldn't be blowing any loose soil over into that site. The site is also has water dust control to prevent that as well. But yeah, that's now, most of that is all surrounding the solar panels now.
Okay. And you talk about that a locking security gate and appropriate signage are present. However, the site security does not. However, site security does appear to be an issue. There are ATV tracks noted, and we see those all over town. So it would be something to talk about with your suggestions, and obviously you want to keep your site safe. I know ATVs are tough to
But that's certainly-
monitor and fight.
Well, that's not a reason we wouldn't give them a permit though, right?
It's actually, it's been, we discussed it in the past. There's been towns that have been sued for that. That's one of the things that we have to do is secure, and applicants have been as well. I mean, not applicants. Kids get in trouble in sand pits. I wouldn't know anything about that.
My entire childhood I played them.
So,
And there's actually lovely houses built on the filter beds that I
so,
played on.
yes. So
Thank you,
anyway,
Christie.
so Ty and Bond did note it as an issue, and I just didn't know whether the question should go to Ty and Bond or whether it should go to you. I'm sure you know that it's a problem. I'm sure you don't welcome it.
I'll speak to it. We don't have a lot of problems.
Say your name, sir, just for the record.
Steve Fletcher from W.J. Graves Construction. Is that they're coming in a little ways onto the property. We don't see them right all open. The solar panels are all fenced off. So it's kind of a nuisance in that one spot, but they're coming in from Chisholm's property.
Yeah, up here.
That's right.
Oh.
In that area. It's kind of like a bowl, so they like playing around in it, but
Sure.
it's not to the point that they're bringing them in. We have several sites, and it gets out of hand when people start bringing them in with trailers from all over the place. We don't have any of that going on. But there are some local riders. I don't know who they are. We've never really caught them in there. When we do, we ask them to leave and tell them why. But we can post that better, and I can talk to Chisholm. Maybe we can put a gate up or block it off, because he uses it and we use it sometimes for surveyors are coming in, and so they come onto our land. So that's really why it's open, but we can firm it off so they can't.
Okay.
It's more
There-
difficult for them to get in there. That's no problem.
Thank you. And for your own protection as well as for ours.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
There's sites in the past that we've asked, our quarry, for example, which is much more dangerous and attractive, that we've asked are required to be fenced. I don't know if that's feasible or if that's something you want to do or not, but it's just,
Now, we
I know
haven't,
it's a
Yeah,
problem.
nor would it be
the other
something.
thing is that we're not in there as much as we used to be, too. So
Right.
that's, we've been a little absent there, we've been shorthanded, so we can't have all our places open. So that's one that we chose to keep closed quite a bit the past couple of years.
It's all, the gravel's going to be there, so that's
Yeah, it doesn't spoil.
correct.
Do you have any other questions relative to this permit?
Yes. So Kayla, you suggested some corrective actions. Do you want to talk about those?
Sure. So we had, like I mentioned, we had mentioned that the well in some of our earlier inspection reports throughout the year that had been damaged be replaced. That had since been replaced, but again, we want to watch it for the spring to make sure that it's reading properly, that it didn't get filled in any way, that we now can't accurately measure the groundwater level. And then again, it was mostly in regards to the wells up at the front. If that area becomes active, that those be deepened so that we can access groundwater. As Micah explained, clearly we go through this process every 2 years for the permit as a whole, but it is an active site that's changing throughout the year, which is part of the reason that we're out there to try to help the town make sure that we know the updated status of the site. So as some of the areas on the site are not even cleared, still have trees, so it wouldn't make sense to put wells in those areas or the areas that aren't being used yet. But as those become active, Time Bond will be monitoring that. And we're in direct contact with Graves when we're out there on site to run anything by them. We have noticed as you've mentioned, the ATVs coming in through the back. It's mostly, in the far back of the property. The front of the property is well signed with no trespassing and a locked gate, but perhaps more posted signs in the back could help.
Okay, thank you. Is there any area of the permit that you or the Graves think need to be closed at this point? Other than, obviously, the solar?
The parts of the permit that need to be closed?
Yeah, is there any area that's done, essentially?
There are,
Claim-
so we
claim-
have, there are a few wells in the middle that we've stopped monitoring because they were removed when the solar panels went in. There are a few stipulations at the very end of the permit that look like they've sat there since the permit was first inactive. Things about, there's two in particular that come to my mind. One that required a traffic study be done, but 9 months after the site was opened, which obviously it's been opened for longer than 9 months, and another about groundwater monitoring 12 months after the permit was opened. So those are conditions 24 and 25. If you want to clean up the permit, it might help to remove those since they've timed out.
Okay, well, times have changed out in your neck of the woods. It's become a popular place, so you may want that for your own. I'm assuming, based on what you said, you're not doing, I know it reflected 70 trucks. I don't know how that came up with, but I'm sure, based on observation, and Kayla, you could probably speak to this, you're not running 70 trucks right now.
Those days are coming down.
Yeah, of our most recent reports through 2022, both March and September, the days that we were out there, had 0 trucks leaving the site. June had 4 and December had 13. So yes, it's much reduced from the 70 that's listed in the permit.
Okay. Is the 70 trucks ever going to be an issue? You're not going to have to exceed that?
You never know. On a given day, it could happen, but very rarely.
Okay.
I don't expect it, but I can't say never.
Okay, thank you. That's all for me.
Okay, great.
Oh, I have one for Kate.
Sorry?
I have one for us, for Kate or for that, but,
Now's your time.
okay. So we have received, thank you, a $60,000 check for a surety bond. And we,
Can I just ask, is this relevant to approval of the permit?
it's relevant to the permit conditions, yes. And surety bonds, we used to just have a bond, now I guess we're taking checks. In case anything ever happened with the town and somebody walked away from a project, that the town would be made whole. I don't know between Ty and Bond and yourself, Kate, if that is, these numbers go back years and years and years, if that's enough, an adequate amount to remediate any kind of damage that the town could be liable for. So
Is that the question?
that's the question, there would be more of a Kayla question.
So the terms of the initial agreement set the bond amount. And without changing the initial agreement, we don't have the ability, that isn't a stipulation, that the town can decide to change the terms of the initial agreement in the bond. So I would say on the very rare occasion that they would walk away, there's a large solar field on that, so we probably would recoup the money, but I don't see it necessarily needing to be more than $60,000, but we also don't have a mechanism to do that.
Well, it's highly unlikely. In the past, it used to be more when land was less valuable than it is now, the land's valuable. But if somebody had a large oil spill or something close to the lake, and the town was responsible for cleaning it up, that was one of the things you weighed. My understanding was that that's what the purpose of the permit was, to look at those. I just wanted to make sure we were fresh enough to change it, because this is over 10 years, money has changed, certainly.
Okay.
The value.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Just to comment on, again, with the solar, that 60,000 was initially set for the entire property. Now, I mean, you figure the time scale of money that, okay, now there's 20 acres of solar panels out there that there's not as much to reclaim. Yes, prices have gone up, so I mean, when you weigh it out, there's not that much left to really reclaim, and that's what that bond was initially set for.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And
All right,
you've
so
had a clean site.
I'm sorry, what?
I would say, and they've have a clean site.
Yes.
I just think we need to look at it for all our permits,
What do we need to look at for all our things?
just to see if we're in accordance with the real cost of having to fix things.
Do you want us to renegotiate all of our permits?
Not right now.
Are there any questions from folks for public comment in the room before we go? And by the way, anybody online, if you wish to be heard in public comment, throw up your fake hand, the Zoom hand, and then we'll recognize you in the order in which you appear. Nobody is rushing the podium in the room, so we will go to Becca. Becca, please identify yourself, name and address, please.
Rebecca Young-Jones, 94 Barnes Court. So I'm a little curious about the meeting notice timing. I thought per the Massachusetts General Laws, Section 48, there had to be 14 days before this hearing could be held, and I think the item only had public notice 10 or so days ago. Are you guys aware of that?
Are we aware of the timing of the notices? Yes.
So, okay, so are we going ahead even though we didn't give 14 days?
We are going ahead with the hearing that's taking place right now, yes. I mean, we discussed this at previous select board meetings. There was an earnest effort to file. The answer to your question is yes, we are going ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I think it says Justin Smith, but my eyes are
It
terrible.
does, but it's Ann Ogilvy, 4 Turner Lane. I ran out of battery, so I'm on my partner's phone. My question, I think it's for Kayla. Kayla, I'm kind of hoping you can walk us through the wells and the testing. I think everybody is aware that this is a water resource protection district. So this is an important area for the aquifer and the water sources for the people in North Lancaster who don't have their own public water supply, but are all on private wells. So the water testing is something that's really important to a lot of us up here, because this business and the solar panels and everything there is all over the aquifer that feeds our wells. So Kayla, I'm hoping, I read the reports, but I didn't, in the select board meeting packet, I wasn't able to access a report of how many wells there were. I did see that 2 of the wells aren't functional, and I heard you clarify that those are maybe not even in the active excavation area. And so my question is, what wells are in the active excavation area? And can you give me the dates of the quarterly reports for those particular wells? And tell us a little bit about them and sort of what the findings were, please.
Certainly, yes, I can speak to that.
Thank you.
Of course. So yes, the main point for those who aren't aware of a lot of these monitoring wells on site is to make sure that the excavation is not going too deep into the ground, that it's infringing on the groundwater. So the minimum distance set per the permit is 10 feet. So none of the excavations should be getting deep enough to be within that 10 feet of the groundwater. The active area right now is mostly in the back in that phase 10. So those would be the phase, Roman numeral X wells, X-1, 2, and 3. For the most part, those are all measuring right now. We're measuring to the bottom of the well without hitting groundwater. So upwards of 20 feet deep. We're measuring, and the probe that we send down is not sensing any groundwater. So, and that's been the case for most of this year, I believe. I could look back at the dates that we went out in 2022. I believe that was one of your questions. Were March 31st, June 10th, September 9th, and December 14th. So those are our quarterly inspections we try to get out on those same months, year to year. Does that answer your questions?
Thank you,
Anything I
yes, no, that's really helpful, and maybe you or the applicant can talk about the depth, that they plan to go. It sounds like from what I gathered, they don't actually plan to be doing a lot of excavation, and they don't intend on going too deep, but I was just hoping somebody could confirm that.
Yeah, the ultimate goal is to have in the future something that can be developed. So it'd be negative for the applicant and the property owner if they took too much material out and got too close to that water table. And that's really the purpose of it. And likewise, this whole area where the former Rockport building was, which is now that unified packing and shipping, that was an earth removal project in the same area that was done in the early 90s by the town, and subsequent to that, we have a pad site that was up for development. So this is just a continuation of that neighborhood, and the well that's on the property actually serves that building. It's a public water supply, but it's the only recipient is that building. The wells in the Turner Pond area, that's in an entirely different aquifer per DEP's aquifer mapping. So that's a different aquifer entirely, and what the applicant is, with these earth removal product permits, we're just removing overburden, and we're leaving overburden behind that it can be developed in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's very helpful. I will, with respect, I will let you know that I am certain that my own well is within this aquifer. So I know that Turner Pond is not, but the tongue of this aquifer actually does come over into this neighborhood. So, but I recognize that the pond itself is not within this aquifer. So, but there are certainly people's well in between Kaliva and Turner Pond that are on this aquifer. But thank you, I appreciate the description of the intention for the property. If you wouldn't mind putting up the map again, I'd love to just get a sense of the road and the wetland that lies on. This is where I'm like directionally challenged, but I think it's to the east of the road. And so just wanted to, because the road, I think it looks like the road runs to the east of the solar array, is that correct?
Road as in
Yep.
access, do you mean Fort Pond Road?
Your road, no, oh yeah, no, I'm sorry, the internal road in the property that leads to the back of the property.
Where they're hauling is adjacent to the solar panels.
Yeah, okay, and so, and there's no intention, I mean, I see your property actually extends beyond that, border, but there's no intent to excavate along the east side of the solar array. The excavation is really concentrated towards towards the south of the solar array, is that correct?
South and north.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
South and north.
To the north of the solar array?
There, he pointed out earlier in his presentation, the top part, if you can point it out again, I don't think she can see.
Yeah, but she
You
can.
got it? That area up there, and then down below,
Yeah, this area
over
here,
there, on the right, yeah,
if the mouse goes there.
right there.
And the
There.
octagonal, or what, maybe that's not the right shape, is that the wellhead area?
That's
for the Unified Global
That's their well.
packaging site?
That's their property, that's their well.
It's their property and their well,
Yes.
and then your property kind of surrounds that.
Yes.
And the area of excavation, you're saying, is sort of to
beige.
the east of that
Yep.
shape?
Yes.
Okay, and so you don't have intentions to excavate to the south then, in that area that you were cleaning up?
Which,
You know, he did point out that he was the north and the south. He said that in his presentation. Can you just move the cursor down to where, can you point to where you
Yeah.
would potentially do in the south?
yeah, right in that area potentially. And all
Okay.
the wetland boundaries have been delineated and located, and that's really what, in the Wetlands Protection Act is really what drove some of the areas, and also obviously the property lines, what they own. So respecting the property lines and respecting the wetland buffer zones,
Thank you very much.
including.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for reiterating where you're doing it. I will note as an at-home listener, and I don't know if others on the call agree, but it's very difficult to hear people in the room when you're a Zoom participant. So I'm sorry that I asked that question twice, it sounds like, but I truly wasn't able to hear the first time. So thank you for your patience.
Right, all right.
I think that's
Thanks,
it
Ann.
for my questions. I do just want to make a statement. I'm glad to hear that there will be fewer trucks coming from the site. I note that Fort Pond Road is a road that is likely to be heavily impacted, both expansion of the unified packaging facility that was approved by the planning board in the fall and by the impending GFI development that's meant to go right on the other side of that delineated wetland and up to the north. And so, I would request that the select board consider including some provision for traffic monitoring related to this permit as things forward, because it's another operation on that road that's going to impact everyday life for people who have to use that road and for people getting on and off Route 2.
Okay.
So
Thanks,
thank
Ann.
you everyone. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
all the answers here tonight.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you. All right, seeing no more hands, we'll close the public comment portion. I will just ask, I have basically one question just of Ty and Bond, and I think I know the answer, which is you have no objection to us renewing this permit, at least as indicated in your report, yes?
Correct.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Now it's our turn to deliberate, such as it will be. I will again yield to Jason since he is on the Zoom. Questions over. Do you have any comments for us in the room, your colleagues on the board, Jason? Or do you have a motion?
No questions. I'm just grateful for the due diligence that Ty and Bond have done, and I'm looking forward to continued relationships going
Awesome.
forward. Thank you.
I think at this point, procedurally, we wanted to close this so we can deliberate, is that right?
I'm just asking him if he has any more questions. Yep, thanks. Do you have any?
I do not.
Great. Jason, is there a motion to close the hearing?
So will we be making a motion for the permit outside the hearing, is that correct?
So we close the hearing, then we vote on renewing the permit outside the hearing.
I would move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, Jason?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Steve? Aye. You can sit down. Thank you very much. All right, Jason has indicated not only does he have no questions, but no deliberation. I have no deliberation or any further questions. Do you have any deliberation or any further questions for your colleagues?
No, my suggestion is going to be that per Ty and Bond's report, that we approve the permit, and thank you for your good business acumen, with the corrective actions as they had written and suggested, and the existing conditions.
So approve the application as submitted with the Ty and Bond report.
With the, previous conditions
So is
and the
that-
corrective actions that Ty and Bond had suggested.
In their report.
Yes.
Yes. Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
You okay?
I apologize, can we get a repeat of the
Yeah.
specific motion?
The motion, Jason, was to approve the permit application with the existing conditions and to include the corrective actions as written in the Ty and Bond report.
Can you be clear on what the corrective actions are?
The corrective actions, as noted during the quality inspection, include repair the well casing
Right.
of well phase X1 to make accessible for the measurement. Fort Pond LLC should also increase signage or other means of site security at the back of the site, which you've agreed to. Farthest from Fort Pond to deter trespassing.
Perfect.
In closing.
Yeah, it might just be me, I apologize, but none of that is coming through Zoom.
We can't hear.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Steve.
Can you speak up? Because if they can hear me and I'm further away.
Sorry, I do have a tough voice to hear. Corrective actions are printed in the Ty and Bond report. First one is corrective actions
I'm
noted
not sure if
during.
you guys are talking to me, but I cannot hear you.
Can anybody else hear?
I can hear you now, Steve.
Oh, fantastic, okay. Why don't I read the corrective actions?
You are,
crystal
We hear
clear.
you, but
Oh.
we just don't hear many other people.
I'm going to go on ahead and read the corrective action since you can hear me. And this is in response to Alex's motion that we approve the permit
With the existing.
with the existing conditions
Yes.
and the corrective actions, which in large measure you've all agreed to. The corrective actions noted during the quarterly inspection include a need to repair the well casing of well phase X-1 to make it accessible for measurement. The also increased signage, as we discussed in the meeting, and for site security, and that's it. Because the rest of it says it's in compliance.
Are these
Yep,
two?
it says it's in conformance. It's, in closing, the operation of the facility appears to be in general conformance.
Yep.
So that's no more corrective actions.
Steve, quick question.
Yes, sir.
Is there a date associated on when the corrective action should be corrected by?
No. I
We
yield
can
to
do
time
that.
bond on.
Well, is it possible to do it by your
I-
next quarter?
Excuse me, I just yielded to time bond, see if there was a question. Like typically, would that just be something you would work with them on to correct in the next quarterly or the one after that?
Typically, if there are active excavations going, we would like to see the well work done by the next quarterly inspection.
And this is not related to an active well, yes?
It is,
It is? Okay.
yes.
Great, so before the next quarterly inspection.
It's the signage and the well, and your next quarterly would be in March. Is that reasonable?
That's reasonable.
Great. Does that answer your question, Jason? Before their next quarterly, which is in March?
So 1 year or,
March, yeah.
March 2023.
March of 2023.
and is that satisfactory to the applicant?
They said it was, yes.
So I will second the motion to approve the permit and corrective actions as defined by Ty and Bond.
Fantastic. Any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving based on the terms outlined in the motion, indicate by saying aye. Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Ms. Turner?
Aye,
Mr. Kerrigan? Aye. 300. Thank you very much for your time.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I'll drive back. All right. Next item up for bid is the Memorial School Reuse Committee. Is Dan gonna be speaking on behalf of the, both of you? Okay, fantastic. I'll move the owl back. Okay. Just name and address for the record, please. Right.
Do you want
All set?
All set?
Okay.
Jane, do you want to? She's a pro. Sorry. She does this.
It's
gonna bother me.
Sorry, guys. Better safe than sorry. She knows what she's doing.
all set.
Okay. Dan Lapen, 95 Patrick Street.
Dan, before you, sorry, just before you go on, just to make sure people can hear you, is that
Well,
okay?
they can't hear you, so it's gonna be a tough sound check.
I know.
Can folks hear Dan? Folks in the Zoom world? The Zoomiverse?
Dan, say something.
Hello? Dan Lapen, 95 Packard Street.
Chief, can you hear him? You're muted. We're testing the speakers apparently. All right, someone spoke. Can you hear him?
Dan Lapen, 95 Packard Street.
Perfect. Thumbs up from the chief. Dan, take it away.
Okay, great. So, again, Dan Lapen, 95 Packard Street.
Yes.
I'm chairman of the Memorial School Reuse Commission, and I'll give a brief history and outline some of the steps that we took in the process for making our recommendation. In June 2020, this committee was created at a town meeting, and at a annual town meeting where there was vote to create a committee of abutters and interested parties. We are about the third or the fourth committee to look at the reuse, depending on how you count. So I count 4, she counts 3, so.
Let's go with Sherry's number.
Okay, fine.
So it was a year later, July of 2021, before we had our first meeting. And that's where we got our mission statement, which was to determine the highest and the best use for the disposition of the Memorial School property. So over the next 3 months, we went over the documentation of the previous 3 committees, or the previous 2 committees. And it was stacks of materials. And we came up with 3 different directions. One was affordable housing. Second was renovation of the existing building. And the third was an activity center with a pavilion. So we spent 10 months going over that, those materials, and coming up with different directions. Then in April of 2022, Jay Moody in the Board of Selectmen meeting challenged our existence. And he was 100% correct. We weren't doing anything. He was also 100% correct with the solution to the problem, which was to dissolve the committee. So we decided to actually get together and do something and not get dissolved. So our next meeting was in June of 2022, and the committee got together and we voted to comply with the current restrictions. Over the 10 months, most of the committee believed that the restrictions for recreation were still in place for the land and the school that we were charged with coming up with a project. So what that meant when we voted in that direction was that housing was taken off the table. The next steps were to get estimates for renovations in the activity center. And right now, I've got to shout out to Mark Schreiber, because he spent a long time developing the estimates for the renovation. It was more detailed than I expected, and thank you again, Mark. In December of 2022, we had all of our estimates, and we found that the renovation was going to be 50% higher than that for an activity center with a pavilion. So about the same time, we found out that the Community Preservation Act had extended their submission deadline for funds out from December 15th to January 15th. So on the morning of January 14th, the committee had a meeting, and we voted for the highest and the best project, which was a community activity center with a pavilion. On January 14th in the afternoon, I filed with the CPA for funding. So, and the funding was for an engineering study only. As we go through our concept plan, we're going to be talking about engineering studies, because this is just a raw concept. There are many questions moving forward with this particular project that we need an engineering study for. We applied for funds of $100,000, which is Kate's estimate. I've been working with Kate from time to time on various different items and issues, and $100,000 was the estimate, which we applied for CBA funds. So I will now hand it over to Sherry, who will begin to go through this project.
Thanks, Dan.
Sure.
Hi, good evening. Sherry Cutler, 67 Harvard Road. I am the secretary on the Memorial School Reuse Committee. I get to keep all the fun notes. I'm just going to go through this presentation that we have here. I'm going to speak to it. I'm not going to read through it because you can read it as we go. So this is the first page. The second page is just an index. Again, table of contents. The third page is what I'd really like to just look at for a moment. As Dan had said, when we went through all of the documents from the previous committees, this is the third committee, and we found the highest and best use, and we started talking about it. This is what we were thinking about. There's a lot of different, so many activities on here. You can see farmers markets, gathering, movie nights, and things like that. So this is just such an important slide that I feel that I just really wanted people to see. Next slide, please. As we know, this is the area we are talking about is the land directly behind the town green and the Thayer Memorial Library. This land that we're talking about abuts the Nathaniel Thayer Memorial Park, a park that is being created for all of the townspeople, not just certain individuals. The land the Memorial School sits on is the part of the land that was a gift from Pauline Thayer in the name of her husband Nathaniel Thayer just prior to her death in 1934. This is only 89 years ago. We're not talking that long ago. It was clearly stated that her bequest for this land is for this land to be shared by all in a recreational area, in a recreational intent, and I think that's very important. The Memorial School building in its current state is a building at risk. It has been vacant for over 20 years and it has no historical value. There is graffiti and water damage on the inside, and the outside of the building is showing deterioration. Next slide, please. These are the many reasons why the Memorial School Reuse Committee would like to move forward with an engineering study so we can start to consider replacing the building with the pavilion. Again, we're just looking for an engineering study to move forward with a project. A pavilion would create space for community gathering, which aligns with the original intent of the gifted land and enables new uses for community space that would benefit all the people of Lancaster, not just a small handful. A pavilion would support the community activity center, the senior center, youth and adult sports, club activities. It could create a picnic area for events already going on down there. It can be an open meeting space, a DIY class, and it can also be an overflow area for the Halloween walk that seems to be growing every year with participants. I know this past year, I was there, participated in it. It was so crowded, you couldn't even walk past the food truck and the town green because it was such a great turnout. I thought it was fantastic, and this to me is an obvious sign that the townspeople enjoy and value community activity and participation. 6, please. A few years back, an open space and recreation survey was completed by the Thayer Field Recreation Task. There were 309 responses, and of the top 10 elements were a pavilion, ice skating rink, skateboarding rink, and additional basketball courts. The survey also stated walking trails, scout activities, and a lawn area to play games. Recreating this area could support those items and could add an area for a portable basketball net, portable pickleball court, bocce, and cornhole area. 7, please. Knowing that there is an interest in these areas where the Memorial School resides, the Memorial School Reuse Committee was formed. This is the 3rd committee, and this committee includes abutters and members from the other town committees. 8, please. The Memorial School is a 12-classroom, single-story building built in 1957. It is adjacent but not included to the Tercentenary building. The school was discontinued in 2002 when it was determined that it was too costly to renovate to meet any future needs of the town. This is important because 21 years ago, this building was deemed too costly to renovate. With the town already financially struggling, finding surplus money to bring this building up to code would be almost impossible. 9, I'm going to let Dan speak to 9
Okay.
as to the Mark Schreiber.
So back to me, this is one of the, is the estimate that I got. And this is for a recovering the school floor by removing the walls and the roof. And somebody questioned, so this is about $190,000 for removing the roof and the walls. And somebody questioned that that was really inexpensive. And my feeling is that it's inexpensive because we saved the floor. We do not take the expense of removing the floor. So that's very important. And just to sideline, this is, okay. So, yes, let's just back to, next slide, please. Then we got a estimate from Circle B for a 70 by 200 foot pavilion that would go on top of the floor. Again, we are saving money by building on top of the existing floor. The estimate here is $476,000. The combined estimate of the demolition and pavilion is about 50% less than the renovation costs. I'd also like to point out this is a solar-ready pavilion that we could put solar panels on if we wanted to, if an engineering study warranted it. Next slide, please.
It's very, very tiny.
Sustainability. So with this concept of an activity center, the utilities that we envision would be for lighting only. And these would normally be turned off except for special events. Any event that happened that needed the lights turned on would require a fee that would pay for the lighting costs. Pavilion roof facing east could have solar panel installation that could generate revenues of up to $10,000. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is where the land is that we're talking about. The Memorial School is located roughly in the middle, but the parcel map is for 695 Main Street. It's important to remember this, 695 Main Street, and includes land from Main Street all the way back to the back of the ball fields. That is the current parcel map. Next slide, please. This is a wetlands map. The dark green areas are wetlands that are located very close to the school. And you'll see some faint blue lines going through it. That is actually seasonal stream. And those require a 200-foot boundary zone. And that 200 feet goes very close to the school if it doesn't, in fact, impinge upon the school up slightly. So definitely need an engineering study to see what impact any sort of development in this area is. Next slide. Now we get to some of the other restrictions. As Sherry mentioned, there is a bequest restriction from Polly and Thayer, which donated the town originally to town of Lancaster. It has been suggested that these restrictions could be removed. However, we found in our stack of materials as we were going through it, there was actually a legal opinion by Jonathan Dennehy in 2004. And in this legal restriction, Dennehy indicates that the initial removal of these restrictions by a letter from the House of the Good Samaritans does not really release those restrictions. And the way to remove them would be a 2/3 vote at a town meeting and a vote by the state legislature. We also found a legal opinion by Koppelman and Page in 2006, which indicates that in 1972, when Article 97 was added to the Constitution of the state of Massachusetts, Article 97 restrictions were implemented on the land as well. Those restrictions are actually more severe because they are more conditional than the original bequest restrictions of Pauline there. Next slide, please.
I think that's it. That was the 14.
That was it?
Yeah.
14?
The last one.
Oh, geez. Okay. Okay, slide 15 was supposed to be a slide which had Article 18 So you have it,
It does in our, no, it has in our packet, I don't know why. It's
Okay.
on the stuff.
can you unhide?
Would you like my copy?
No, I know that by heart. Can you unhide anything? They may be hidden. Yeah, so if you go to File,
It's a
unhide.
surprise.
Do you have
It's a surprise.
secret files we don't want to see?
A surprise. We want to see those.
It's in code.
And PowerPoint, it's crazy. Okay, never mind, I'll just talk at it.
Yeah.
I have my own notes.
We have, yeah.
Okay.
That's why I was wondering why we said the last slide, because I'm like, there's one right here.
Yeah, exactly. So, the next slide is for Article 15. That was put out at an annual town meeting. 18,
Yeah.
18, in 2016, at an annual town meeting. That article was to obtain $300,000 in funding for the playground, that is, the new playground that is out on Packard Street. The initial grant application for that grant consisted of a design drawing with black magic marker around it. Okay. The granting agency required a legitimate legal parcel map. So that was a parcel map for 695 Main Street, which was in the warrant article, was a Cabco 82511 map. Now that contained a Scrivener error. It was supposed to be 823, and I believe this is my 823 parcel map that was supposed to be in Article 18.
Just for the record, I wasn't on the board then.
Somebody here, no, never mind. So there is also a second Scrivener error in the warrant article, which is 17 acres was supposed to be 22 acres. In going through our pile of materials that have been collected over the time, we've come across 17 acres, 18.9 acres, and 22 acres. So it's, the more numbers you get associated with any land, the more chances there are for errors. So in the end, the entire land parcel is now restricted to general law, chapter 45 restrictions, in addition to the Article 97 restrictions and the bequest restrictions. So the last slide would be that we are now pursuing the highest and best use. In summary, our proposal is the highest and best use, because we believe we have the highest participation by the most number of people in Lancaster of all ages. Saving the floor reduces costs, no annual utility costs, so we have financial feasibility. Staying within the current footprint also means that we are not expanding and broadening the physical layout. And finally, we have legal permissibility because we are staying within the restrictions. The next steps is to do an engineering and design study, further define the project. And along that lines, we have filed with CPA for funds, as well as I will be getting together with Kate, and we'll be looking at additional external grant sources for funding. So that's going to be a big key in moving this forward, is external grant funding for this project.
Okay.
Okay, so if you have any questions,
I do. I'm sorry. Somebody else, did you say something?
So that's not good.
Oh, I will and I
No
do.
questions?
I will and I do. So obviously although you make your case incredibly well on the assertions around the deed restrictions, And you certainly make the case on Article 18 that there's a lot of muddy language and confusion around that. I would just a couple of questions, and these are like, I didn't go to law school, so I don't live by the rule of only ask questions you already know the answer to, so I'm legit asking questions because I want to learn. First, I grew up in a town, and I was raised to believe that that part of the building was itself a memorial to the World War II dead. That there's a plaque that was where my mother worked for a long time, so I saw the plaque a lot, that the memorial, or their memorial, the center hall was for Civil War dead. The flagpole was World War I dead, and then my understanding was that the school itself was a memorial to World War II dead. It doesn't mean that you can't change that. I just posit that to see if that rings a bell to anybody? Okay. Because I know the tercentenary building was there to celebrate the 300th, but the school itself was built in the 50s to celebrate, or to not celebrate, honor our World War II.
I have heard it is Veterans Memorial.
Which is why it's the memorial school.
Correct.
Yeah.
I have heard that, but we haven't found anything in our, that, we only probably looked at a quarter of all the stuff that's out there.
I'm sure you looked at, what you looked at was about 3 times what everybody else looked at, so you've done a lot of work. I would just, that question concerns me because I would want to make sure that whatever the folks in our jobs back in 1950, some odd, when they built this and dedicated it to that, I want to make sure that we honor that and not, so I want to flag that.
Can you just say what they were again, because I want to specifically look that up. You believed it was?
My understanding was the school itself, which is
Yep.
why it's called a memorial school.
Yep.
I don't know about you guys, but when I grew up, I thought every town had a memorial school. I didn't realize they were
So
called
I didn't.
elementary schools. But that the school itself
Yeah.
was dedicated to men and women from Lancaster who died in World War II. Just as the center, oh, sorry, and I got that wrong. Center hall of the school of the libraries, Civil War, and the children's wing is World War I. So that's what I believe to be true. That could be, the flagpole's a general, there are veterans on there. And then we built the larger Veterans Memorial behind it back when we both served 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, I think the flagpole was World War I, but
But the school, I remember because the Thayers built the children's wing to honor one of their family members who died in World War I. So anyway, I just asked that because I want to make
Happy
sure
to
we have that
research it.
information.
Yeah, no, happy to research that. Thank you.
There used to, I remember, because I went to school there too.
Yeah.
There used to be a brass plaque in the front entryway that
Right.
talked about veterans and stuff.
Thank you. See?
By the
I'm not
glass
crazy.
case? Was it
I'm
by
not
the glass
crazy.
case?
No, it was on the wall, wasn't it? It was on the brick wall. Right when you walked in the front door from the circle, right?
Exactly.
Right there.
Right there.
Yes, all right, I'm not crazy. Well, I might be, but not
We'll
for
have
that
to
reason.
research it. Is it still there?
Where they had that.
I don't know if it's still, yeah, they took it down. I don't know, you should ask the historical society. They probably have it somewhere in one of these buildings.
Yeah, okay.
So that was one big question for me. And then from the, and this is just a practical question for you all, since you are the most effective reuse committee, since we had several
you.
others that didn't get to this point. So just by the very nature of that. Your charge, and maybe this is a question to you, your charge goes up to what point? Because my concern is, I appreciate the going after CPA money. I just want to make sure that we don't have a bunch of well-intentioned commissions and boards out applying for money on the town's behalf and obligating us to things. But as long as you checked it all, okay. So, and then just what we have to clarify moving forward is, like, up to what point? Like, when do we say thank you? Well, thank you for your service anyway. But when do we say thank you for your service and take it from there? Was that made clear to you when you joined the?
So our mission statement says disposition. So that
Which is
doesn't
a
answer
very-
your question at all.
Which is a fantastically vague word. Okay, great. So,
Reading
yeah.
the notes from how this got to be a town meeting article, it seems that the idea was that the group comes back and makes a recommendation on the highest and best use. And then the board either re-empowers with a different mission to go forward, or develops a different committee, or one of them, goes to
some kind of funding or a study or something, so I don't think you're there yet.
Right.
I would certainly say we haven't made a real recommendation yet.
Oh.
We have a concept,
Oh, okay.
but until we get through an engineering study and we put all the bells and whistles on it, it's not a final recommendation. Of course, that is up to you.
At some point, for us to spend $100,000, you'd have to get behind it as a recommendation.
Right.
Otherwise, we could be doing that all over the place. Okay, that's helpful and clarifying. So just gonna reach out on my concern. First of all, I know it's all falling down or whatever, but I have a fondness for that building, mostly because my mother worked there for 1,000 years. I used to go there when she was a playground aide before I was in kindergarten, so I spent a lot of time in that building, and I'm very fond of it, and want to see that space used what's best for the town. And so I first want to start with a huge thanks to you all for the incredible work you're doing, to make sure that we act in keeping both with the gift that we received 89 years ago and in the best interest of the town. So I just want to say that. I don't know where we're going to end up on this. I just wanted you to know that I appreciate the work that you do, because I know it's certainly not for the pay you get to do this, because that's zero. But it's for your passion for your community and the neighborhood, and so I really do appreciate that. I will say my biggest concern is I want to be able to stand behind whatever project we do there, 1,000% shoulder to the wheel, just very excited to, if I'm still on the board, cut a ribbon, or just be very excited. I think there's some things that need clarification, and I would hope that the board would agree with me, but you might not, that's okay, to request that Kate work with council to try to, all those things that both of you delineated on the deed and the restrictions, they're all, I would say, I'm not a deed expert, but they could be subjective. Like one person's deed restriction could be a vagary that another person could interpret.
And they're old.
Yeah.
2006 is the fresh, youngest one we have. So, yeah.
So I
agree 100%.
So if we go, if this decides, if you guys end up recommending it, and we say as a community, this is I can't remember the terms you used, Dan, but the best use of the space, I want to know that we're backed up by knowing that these deed restrictions are.
Absolutely.
That are clear. And knowing full well, those who support the pavilion idea over housing or other thing, that if the restrictions are clear but not clearly restricted to recreation, that opens, you guys had mentioned at the beginning, you took housing off the list of things you considered early because you believed the deed restrictions excluded that.
Correct.
Which makes all the sense in the world. If someone asked me to do a task and said it can't be this, I wouldn't pursue that. I want to clarify whether it can be that, so that we can have that answer for the townspeople. That piece of land is a gem for our town, and whatever we do with it next needs to be long-term sustainable and something we can all be proud of. So I don't want anyone to say 10 years later, well, Kerrigan messed up and they forgot to dot the I and cross the T, and they had no idea that wasn't a deed.
Scrivener error.
A Scrivener error, yeah, don't want any of those. So that's gonna be my hope. My guess is, I got pretty far in politics early in life by reading a room. My guess is a lot of people in this room are gonna have a lot of comments about this project and and I appreciate them attending. Heather's on, probably has corrected me, by the way, somebody already corrected me. The children's wing was put on to honor a Thayer who died of leukemia in the 1920s. And the flagpole is the First World War. Anyway, so that's sort of the direction I'm heading in, but I wanna.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather. Oh, she's back, all right. So that's sort of excuse me, where my head's at. I find this concept very interesting. I, in my mind, always had it as housing, with a hybrid of including more recreation things, but I give you great credit. I think the proposal, as it stands right now, is a very interesting one. I think it could bring a lot of life and interesting stuff to the town. That being said, I do think regardless of what we do, we have to clear up exactly, the black magic marker map that you referred to. I wasn't on the board then, but it drives me nuts that somehow to get a grant, we allowed a huge swath of land to be limited for perpetuity for some use just because of either an error or something. So I want to clear that up because I think we owe the townspeople sort of the best and hardest work on not just clearing up what's going on at the Memorial School, but frankly, the whole town green, these buildings, everything are included in some of that stuff. So, yeah, so it's something we need to, a question we need to answer. So before I go to my Heather's on, off, she doesn't want to talk? Okay, all right. Now I'll go to my colleagues. Since I went to you, Jason, last time, I'm gonna go to Alex first this time, and then to you. Any questions? And then we will throw it to the public.
Well, Steve, you covered a lot of good points and a lot of my questions. The slide 15, the one that we didn't see, but you've spoken a lot to, which refers to the restrictions, is sort of the meat of the matter
Yes.
here. So
Absolutely.
it sounds like we have consensus that we need to focus and work on that with, and we knew it, and if not just for a pavilion concept, the library, and if it's looking at engineering and so on needs to know those things, we need to. So we all agree. That's great. Realtor Day. When I read through your presentation, and it was a really well done, concise, inspiring presentation. I love the idea, the look of the pavilion pictures that Sherry, that you were so excited about when you presented and that we saw. It took me back to the day, because I've lived through, I think 4, committees.
There you go. Yeah, let's settle on 3.5 committees.
So I've lived through a lot of them and been inspired, and actually I think they've all done a really good job. We've all suffered from being a little bit, it's really difficult to give such hard-working, good people not a clear charge on that we need to. We had charge, but there's some very good intentions, and then the key and the grist has always been funding and money, and so that's something that we also need to look at as diligently as we do. And let's face it, even researching this legally is going to take quite a bit of money. One of the things is that, speaking of money, both on that grant, we spent a lot of money on creating a master plan that, Sherry, you sat on, and some other people. So we were spent, what was it, 100-something thousand? Over 100,000, on developing a master plan for the same area we're talking about, not just including the school, but also including the fields and behind there. And one of the features of that plan that I really liked was a pavilion, amphitheater. I think that was exciting for a lot of people. It was in a completely different area, and some of the things that were posed for or looked at for this bare area in this school, you know, how does that, because we've invested so much in that plan, how does this dovetail? How does this work? What do we move around, and how do we shuffle? Because, again, like Steve, we had talked about housing is just such a natural extension. I know it doesn't have to be, and the restrictions certainly speak to a different thing. But, and having served over there, I also think of one of the things that I would want to look at too is parking, because parking is such a choke point for these gazillion people that will be coming for pavilions or whatever other amphitheaters, you know, what other kind of things that we're doing.
So those are engineering study things. So
They
you're
are.
absolutely right.
No, they are. So, and how it works, it would be great to, I know Sherry's got both plans, both the slides memorized, as you do, and probably the previous master plan, and just looking at whatever you do, integrating with that master plan too. Plans change and evolve, they should, you know, as our times and our needs and our restrictions do. So, but those are just top of my head thoughts.
Do you want comment back or? So,
We love comment back.
yeah. So the master plan, I was part of that, especially being a butter and then just talking with it. I was more on the fundraising side but did attend the meetings, and some things do move around. A pavilion not being so permanent is one that could be moved. And when the master plan was created, the building was kind of set aside and not really put into the layout of the whole land. And then when we got together on this committee, we started looking and we noticed the restrictions, we'll call it that for now, until we get clarification. And we were like, hey, this could be a whole pavilion area, which could support all of this whole fair area, which is how we started talking about this. It's a great location. I have all the files from the previous committee.
Sure you do.
I do. I've been through them all. I've looked through them. Parking, permanent parking, not temporary, because temporary, we have the horse shed fair, we have the Halloween walk, we have tons of things that go on in town, and people are not permanently parking. In the previous notes, permanent parking for, say, a residential area was an issue, and things like that. So that's why we tried to focus on something that had the limited amount of issues surrounding it. And that's how we kind of came up with a pavilion that would support that plan, the master plan, to coincide with a recreational area for the entire town. And that's how that came about. It wasn't just limited to a certain few. So it coincides with the master plan is what it was a long answer. But it abuts to the master plan without changing. I know there was a question, why do you have, basketball courts and that's in the master plan? No, not a permanent. I made it very clear that it's temporary. They have the basketball nets that are on wheels and can be moved around, same as, pickleball and stuff. So it's an overflow area that could coincide with the master plan without changing any of the permanent structures that are already there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jason, do you have any questions? Excuse me.
No questions. I just want to say how grateful I am to the entire committee for the work they've put forth. I think the largest takeaway I have from this is how much of an opportunity Lancaster has. And I think, Steve, I think you said it really right. We need to, make sure we're investigating and figuring out what options we have going forward. Because the opportunity here is as tremendous as the reuse community's put forth. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I think we are good with you all.
All right, great,
We
thanks.
are going to begin to hear public comment from folks in the room. If you would like to provide public comment, you should do so from, if you're able to, from the podium, because it's the best way for the owl to see and hear you. And you just have to come up, say your name and your address. And what we'll do is go with anybody who's in this room first, or as you're making your way, you can go, just come on up and line up if you'd like, although now I just called on Denise, so she's first. But then anybody who wants to line up behind her, and then I will go in the room on the screen, in the room on the screen. Make sense? Let's, if we could try to, so I'm gonna give you the admonition I give in the normal public comment for a select board's meeting, which is that public comment is a privilege of all of us to participate in this meeting. We're doing so in a respectful way, not in an attacking way. If anybody is heard doing something to the difference of that, I, as the chair, will stop you from your comments. So this is a fantastic turnout. We're all here because we want what's best for the town. So no, frankly, mean comments, no abrasive comments, no going after people by name. I know, Denise, I'm sorry, no. No going after town employees, town volunteers. This is all about information sharing and your opportunity to share your feelings and your thoughts. But we try to come at our public comment from a place of positivity. So with that, I yield the floor to you, Denise.
Thank you. Denise Hurley, 102 Bolton Road. One thing it's funny, I think I was on one of those 4 committees in the beginning, if I remember right. It was a while ago, and I know one piece that I was very excited about was the amphitheater. It was back in the woods, a place that Sue Smiley and I looked at and considered way back then. Just wanted to say that.
There you go.
Okay, so there is a housing crisis in Massachusetts, and I've seen homelessness firsthand, because I worked in Worcester for 7 years at Jeremiah's Inn, which is a home for recovering addicts, in a section of Worcester that a lot of homeless people, tent cities, that type of thing. Now, Lancaster actually is part of the crisis as well, but Lancaster can be part of the solution. Lancaster needs more senior housing, more mobility impaired housing, more veterans housing. The town has the perfect building to help with that need, the Memorial School. Let's work together with the legislators to lift any restrictions that might keep the town from using the school as senior, mobility impaired, or veteran housing. This is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go Rebecca, Victoria, Heather. So Rebecca, name and address, please.
Hi, Rebecca Young-Jones, 94 Barnes Court. Has anybody calculated the return on investment for this plan? Because I would be very interested in seeing that. And secondly, I agree with Denise Hurley wholeheartedly. We just got out of a special town meeting where we understood that we need more affordable housing, more senior housing. And we also understood that we were going to limit our ability to protect our town from air, water, and noise pollution by passing a rezoning. But yet, this scheme seems to be, I don't know, frivolous in my estimation. So, yeah, I agree with Denise. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Victoria, please your name and address.
Sure. Victoria Petraka, 67 Woodland Meadow Drive. And I'm actually here speaking for the Affordable Housing Trust seat. Our representative is Carolyn Reed. The Affordable Housing Trust has a seat on the Memorial School Reuse Committee. And Carolyn has a dissenting vote, and she could not be here tonight, but we wanted to make sure that the spirit of that dissenting vote was represented. The Council on Aging also has a seat on the committee, and they too have a dissenting vote. It's incredibly important that we get to the bottom of the restrictions, so I'm really happy that that's going to happen. And the reason why it's so important is that the need for affordable senior and mobility impaired housing in Lancaster is very real. I just want to give you some data. So we have currently 2,206 active waitlist applications for Bigelow Gardens.
206?
It's 2,206 active waitlist applications. That comes from a database called CHAMP. It's the Common Housing Application for Massachusetts Programs database. Every time one of those applicants finds housing, they are removed from the database. That data also comes from Wanda Munding, who is our executive director at the Lancaster Housing Authority, and it's dated as of January 31st, 2023. Of those numbers, 870 are elderly, 1,334 are mobility impaired, 30 are from Lancaster, 30 elderly applicants are from Lancaster, 10 mobility impaired applicants are from Lancaster. If that isn't tangible evidence of the housing crisis in our state, I don't know what is. And it's important to understand that the pavilion is great, and I would really like to see it built, and I have said this to the Memorial School Reuse Committee. Let's work together. Let's meet multiple objectives let's get the pavilion done. It does not need to be at that exact location, if indeed the restrictions can, if they exist and if they can be lifted, which is the fundamental question. But if so, it behooves us to address the housing crisis in our town. And I really feel strongly about it. I think that we have to have some compassion for the elderly, the mobility impaired, the veterans in this town. And I'll just leave it at that. Carolyn has been a steadfast voice on the committee. She would be here in person, but she had another commitment. I have the master plan. The pavilion is in a great spot. We can do both. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather, are you going to school me on what is dedicated to who? Heather, you're up.
Heather, you're still muted.
You're still muted, so there you go. Now you're there. Nope. One more time. There you go.
Okay,
There you go.
can you hear me?
Barely, but yes.
Yes, okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Better, okay, very good. I'd like to say yes, the Memorial School was designated as a memorial for World War II
Okay.
veterans.
Thank you.
So that, you know.
Heather,
so
before you
that
go,
is-
Heather, before you
so I
go,
can go to the office tomorrow and get you the paperwork that says that's so.
Wait, Heather,
But
before
I'm
you-
not understanding, does that make
Heather,
you think
Heather,
that it would
Heather,
restrict the use of the
Heather.
building in some way?
Heather, could you just say your name and address, please?
Oh, okay, 294 Nicholas Drive, Lancaster, Massachusetts, 01523.
We're familiar with the town and state. And Heather Lennon. Thank you. Keep going. Sorry.
Yes, oh, my name, of course.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
quite all right. We got you.
Yeah, now, I just asked you a question, Steve. I said, does that change your opinion of what the building should be used for otherwise, because it's a memorial?
Well, yes. I want to make sure that we are honoring those who made it a memorial. So I would definitely love whatever you can dig up or whatever material you have on it. And please share it with the reuse committee as well as the select board. Do you have the plaque?
Yes, I will be happy to do that, and I'll make that one of my projects when I'm in the office tomorrow.
Thank you.
Now, insofar as having a pavilion there, I was always very happy with Mrs. Thayer's choice to designate that as a recreational area, because in Lancaster, you have an ideal setup. You have a formal, beautiful town green with all your buildings arranged. Very few other towns in Massachusetts have that. I don't know of any, I can't think of any. And then you have back-to-back a recreational campus. So you have your living room, your formal living room up front, and your rec room in the back for all ages. So why not go with that? And if you have an affordable housing problem, don't we have some other options for that? Bigelow Gardens was put in 1961. It's high time that whole thing be renovated or start from scratch and build that up, and I don't know why the state of Massachusetts hasn't done that before now. And you also have a lot of land up on the old common that can be used for housing, as well as a possibility at Atlantic Union College. Now, if you put the housing in and back of the library, it's going to be for a limited number of people, and you're going to have a lot of peripheral buildings around to support that. You're going to have emergency vehicles going in and out, and it's going to make kind of a distraction right there in the middle. So has anybody thought about that when you're thinking about a master plan and what you want to leave for the future of the town?
Well, I can't speak for everyone, but I will say yes. But I appreciate your comments. We are definitely, we're looking at the DCAM area, which I think what you're referring to for the old common, and AUC.
For housing.
Yeah,
Housing.
for all kinds of opportunities, yeah. But yes.
And what about rehabbing Bigelow Gardens? Has that not been given any thought?
Once you said it, it started getting thought right here, but I had not given it thought.
Yeah, okay, well, maybe that should be considered, and the idea of a back-to-back campus appeals to me quite a bit.
Sounds good.
As a matter of fact, when we had the gazebo conflict a few years ago. I was very strongly in favor of having the gazebo moved to the recreational area because I see it as an asset to that
Yes.
sort of setup. And I'm wondering, what do you think about that?
You're just trying to get my goat, Heather, because you know how I feel about the gazebo.
Well, you know, the gazebo and all.
You're trying to get me to lose votes by taking a side on gazebo.
Should have stopped, should have stopped.
The toy that you put on a laptop, a tabletop, to be pushed around like a puck.
All right, well, we can
Yeah,
dig into
so-
that at another meeting.
So it's time to move it to the appropriate place.
Okay, Heather, I'm gonna need to, Heather.
Heather. And a big parking
Heather?
lot.
Heather? Heather, we've drifted into another meeting. Thank you, I appreciate it, Heather, thank you very much.
Okay, that's all I have to say.
Awesome, appreciate it, look forward to the research.
I wrote a whole column about it a few years ago.
I
Published in the
I know you did.
As a guest columnist.
know you did. And we look forward to the information on the memorial school as a memorial, so thank you.
Okay, and I have one more thing. The Division of Conservation Services, a lady named Melissa Cryon was the contact. Didn't we receive a grant from them for that recreational area back there? And wasn't the entire front campus mistakenly
Yes,
put
that's-
under purview of the recreation committee?
Yeah, I believe that was-
To solve that problem.
That's one of, we refer to that in the big black magic marker. And that is part of the effort that I hope this board will endeavor to take with town council to clarify any and all deed restrictions. So thank you, Heather. We got a crowd building in the room. We can talk, Heather.
Playground either, because that was a lot of money, as I recall, and I'm saying
Yeah.
a playground cost that much?
Yes, they do. Yeah,
It was a lot of money.
yeah. All right, Heather, we're gonna move on, but thank you, and let's circle back.
Okay.
Let's circle back. Awesome. Thank you so much. Sorry.
Jennifer Laban, Packard Street, and I thank Heather because she said just about everything that I feel.
Could you say what number Packard Street?
95.
Awesome.
I think Pauline Thayer made it very specific as to how she wanted this property to be used, and I think it's illegal, immoral, amoral, unethical to change that will. I do agree that there's a need for housing, but I also see other places for housing, whereas this is the ideal place for a pavilion. And I like their idea of a pavilion. It serves many people, not just a few. And there's so many things. I mean, I ran the fishing classes. We could have been doing them under there for several years. Many things could be handled under that pavilion and opened up, and it's a great community spot. I'd hate to see it changed. And I don't know I had thought that these maps were the legal maps that they talked about. And who's gonna find out what's the real?
Our lawyers.
Okay, so that, you're on that then.
I'm gonna hope that my board members join me in voting to do that, to give Kate the authority to go and work with town council. Because I think to your point, we just have to clear it all up.
Right.
Because some would, and I actually have this question for Dan or Sherry, which just came to me. Because Mrs. Thayer's will was written obviously long before that school was built for recreation purposes only, and yet we then built a school there. Yes, that's right, yeah.
Done research.
Yeah.
The word recreation, as we use it today, is quite different than when her will was written. And if you go back and research, and I have it at home and I'm happy to give it to you, there was a huge recreation movement. There was one that actually started in New York years ago that overflowed into Boston. I was researching a lot of this more today. Recreation was used for the community of the town, such as to gather place to bring people together. School at that time was not mandatory. It was a place to bring people together to educate them if they could be educated. Some kids didn't go to school because they had to farm or be home and like that. And that's where the word recreation falls under. It's not the way we use it today.
Got it, okay. That's helpful. And I've had that question before and it just.
You have to go back to when, you have to go back to when it was written.
Yeah,
Yep.
but I really implore you to not try and lift restrictions. That would create so much chaos. Who's gonna ever donate anything to Lancaster again? I think it's absurd.
Well, we're just trying to clarify restrictions, not necessarily. we're not
Right,
saying we're
right,
lifting
but
any.
other people have, mentioned lifting the restrictions to put in housing there. And even if you did put in housing there, it's not enough. AUC, there's, the Chansung dining halls and everything there.
Well, we don't own that.
There's a
So
pool.
that's- the
No, we
difference is
don't.
we don't own that
No,
land.
we don't,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah,
could be offering to buy, at any rate.
yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want you to keep it as is. Thank you.
As is with their plan.
Pardon?
As is with their plan, not,
Yes. Yes.
not just the building.
Keep it within the restrictions
Got it.
of Pauline Thayer's will.
Copy. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Jen. Appreciate it. We're gonna go to Sheila and Dave Millette. I'm assuming they're the Sheila and David who usually are on comment, but I don't see your last name.
Yeah,
Oh, there you
it's
are.
down there on the.
Yeah, that's us, Steve.
There
So, can you guys hear me?
Yes, name and address, Dave.
All right, Dave Millette, 2748 North Main Street in Lancaster. So I was thinking about this, and I understand that about the Pauline Thayer's will, and I do respect that. I do also wonder, had she lived, if maybe she would have changed her will, given that there is a building built there presently, and some of the really good reasons to turn that building, that specific building in that place into affordable housing include what's already around it. So people who, might be mobility impaired, it would be pretty awesome for them to be able to go to the library because it's right next door, to be able to use the senior center, which is right next door, to be able to use the MARC bus that's there, and all of those activities aren't there, aren't everywhere else, aren't at Big Old Gardens, aren't at, the AUC right now at least. And the other thing is that there's a plan for this whole space that included a pavilion that's in a different place. And over closer to the ball fields and an amphitheater. And I think if we're gonna put a pavilion in, that makes more sense to put it over there nearer to the ball field and the parking that there's a plan for. I also find it somewhat disturbing. I understand the rationale, but I do find it disturbing that if we're going to do an engineering study, we should really, I guess I would just totally agree with you, Steve. Be sure that these restrictions are ironclad. And I also find it interesting that there was a school built, even though the change in the definition, I think that the Thayers gave a lot to the town, and I think that they, given the crisis that's present, that they would probably approve of a plan of turning this into affordable housing, this area.
Dave, thank you. So I would just, sorry, you have like 5 more seconds, or do you? You good?
Oh, no, that's okay.
All right. So I would just, all right, awesome, thanks, Dave. I would just stray, and this is no comment toward anybody, but from trying to project what we think somebody might want or not want, I think we'll all serve ourselves better that way. Sir.
Ralph Gifford, 861 George Hill Road. I believe that for affordable housing, we're going to need a lot more space. Space that would be approximately the size of the AUC campus. I'm on a committee that is involved in trying to figure out what to do with that particular property. So part of the reason why I'm here is to learn more about the needs and so forth. So I'm really appreciating the input here because it can help to create a vision. I remember growing up, there was Rowell's Market right there. And one of the things that used to be, that is potentially very important to elderly, is the ability to get out to some place where there's shopping. I would love to see more of that developed in that area so that it's not just housing but there are some stores and some things that are really convenient to people. I think there's an opportunity here for to set a vision. Now, I'm also partial to the Thayers. I grew up in the head gardener's house for the Thayer estate. Used to roam all the gardens. Priscilla Thayer, the last living Thayer in Lancaster, was my next door neighbor. I used to play in that bowling alley in the basement of the other Thayer house over there. That was all my backwoods. And I appreciate all that the Thayers have done, and I hope we will respect that. I was married in the, what was for a while called the Thayer Conservatory. My daughter's reception was there. So all very important to us, and I think we need to respect that legacy. If we go the pavilion route, I would urge the committee to consider making it a year-round pavilion. I've been to many different pavilions for different types of activities. I've seen them that some that look like they were done on a shoestring, barely usable on a seasonable basis, without facilities or anything like that. So as we go, I hope we can consider ways to make it really attractive, something that we're all proud of. That's it.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. I also bowled in that bowling alley, by the way. I think you did too. All right, next up, Leslie Allison.
Hello everyone, Leslie Allison, 343 Brockelman Road. And I'd like to speak tonight in my capacity as a member of the Commission on Disability in Lancaster. And I want to speak about Bigelow Gardens first off, and just clarify that Bigelow Gardens is owned by the state. And unfortunately, unless the state decides to change anything with regard to accessibility, it remains inaccessible to many applicants. There is, of all 70 units at Bigelow Gardens, there is one unit that is truly accessible. And we on the Commission on Disability have investigated this. We've talked to the state, but unless the state decides to do anything differently, there's nothing that we in Lancaster can do about it. I think that this memorial school, there presents an opportunity here, if the deed restrictions allow, to provide us with much needed accessible housing, accessible, affordable housing for Lancaster. You heard Victoria say that of the 30 applicants to Bigelow Gardens that are Lancaster residents, 10 of those have mobility impairments. So this is truly a large need for our town. So I support, while I appreciate the work that the committee has done and the research they've done in this area, I would support development of some accessible housing in the Memorial School. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. You're up.
Okay, my name is Charles LaFave, 134 Pack Street. To be honest, I don't like getting up and speaking with everyone. I usually keep my opinions to myself. I'm a little disturbed about all the myths and stuff that are flying around right now about this. I hear a lot of things that this is good, that's bad, everything else. But when it really comes down to it, we need to get to see what all the deed restrictions are. And I've actually done some research on this. I'm a root cause corrective action person with aerospace. And I found that this thing is actually an onion that as you peel it back, there's actually even more restrictions you're gonna find, because there were property swaps that were done to take the common from the church or give the church land. And we've identified at least 6 families that would have to be notified and have their heirs approve the change, because their properties were donated for the town creation of the town green and recreation. It's a big mess. It's gonna be a very, very expensive mess. And I think it's trying to target to go against restrictions or even look at it, it's gonna cost a lot of money, more than what you'll get out of it. The only thing I want to bring up is I know that there are 3 other parcels that the senior housing is looking at, so they have other options besides just this property. I also seen the maps for the proposals for this was a senior center from previous committees, and all of them require permanent parking. So if you go 12 to 50, I've seen up to 50, they had a contractor who said, I need 50 to break even. You need 50 parking spaces minimum per law. Where are you gonna put that? The other thing, the playground. To have the playground there, they use the parking out front on the Rotary as parking for the playground. So now that's restricted. So there's a lot of things that need to be considered in this, the misstep need to stop, and we need to start really rolling up our sleeves, getting the facts.
I appreciate that. I want to be very clear. We're not spreading any myths about anything.
No,
We
but
want to-
I hear a lot of myths
Yeah.
from people that are
And also-
starting, people talking on the side and stuff like that. It's like, it has to stop. We need to really do something.
Agreed. Are you Neil's brother?
Yes.
I know
It's
you
older
do.
brother.
God, it's been a long time. We've got, Leslie, your hand's still up, we gotta go to Jay Moody. But I will just say, I wanna make sure that like, folks listening, and this is a very good discussion, I appreciate everybody keeping it, very focused. This isn't this is not a debate about pavilion versus housing, like, I don't want us to become a two-camped, discussion. We do that a lot in our town, and I want us to at least get the information, so we're making the right decision no matter what we do. One more time?
Just quick, I just want one second.
Well, I agreed to go back and forth, so I'm sure, Jay Moody, you're up.
Yes, I'd like to say that, I was the chairman of the last committee that dealt with this, or tried to deal with it. And we had decided that the best use for it was senior housing. We had not negotiated, but we had talked with a couple of nonprofits about doing it. We went to the town meeting with an article that we had written. We got there, and at those days, the thing that we didn't get the whole thing until we got there, and our whole article had been changed to sell or lease either both the town hall and that building. So we withdrew our thing, but that was our best thing that we could find for it. We also had open meetings where we invited the people from the town to come and speak. So I have a much better or better different thing, and I think it should be used for housing. I really do.
Okay. Thank you, Jay.
Hi, I'm Cynthia LaFave. I'm on 134 Packard Street. I'm on the committee. We spent quite a bit of time reviewing restrictions. It's, as Charlie and everyone said, it's a complicated matter. There's also an issue of grant money that's been issued, possibly losing if we don't make the right decision. So it will take money to review the restrictions, and it'll take money to change them. It's taken quite a bit of time just to get to where we are, with many different people involved and considerations and proposals. And we hope that the work we've done will help inform and drive a solution that works for everyone, but it's probably going to take time.
Yes.
And I just ask you, one of the things that was really personally very disturbing to me is when we toured the memorial school, there is hate graffiti all inside the school. And it has to be removed or covered. So if there's one thing that could happen right now, I know other people don't see it, but it's there. It's called the Memorial School, and there is obscene.
Okay. I appreciate that. Yeah.
And it just needs to be addressed. So we're patient and time and things will go on, but maybe if that just could be addressed immediately, that would be great.
As close to immediately as we can get it addressed, but thank you. That's important to address, thank you. Jay Moody's hand's still up, but I think it's just up.
I'm gonna ask him.
He just took it down.
Sherry Cutler, 67 Harvard Road, still talking for the Memorial School Committee, not the individual. I think we have to define. So I just want to clarify, we're here with the hopes of maybe a pavilion, but for an engineering study.
Right.
Nothing can move forward. Even if affordable housing goes in, nothing can happen until an engineering study is done. And so that's kind of where the majority of this meeting came from, to move forward, to get an engineering study so we can at least start moving forward. I did just want to speak to the affordable housing because this is becoming such, right, one or the other. And I don't want it to be that way. When we looked at this project, we researched everything. Again, I said this in the presentation. I have all the notes from all the past committees. We have sat down and we have read them. Jay, I read all your emails. Victoria read all her emails, everything that went back and forth, and there's so much information. And not only the restrictions was an issue, parking was an issue, sewer was an issue, all of that was an issue. And so that's why we took everything. I just don't want people to think that this committee is dismissing anything that this town needs. We have taken that into considerations, and when I tell you hours I have sat and read and researched, which is not my forte, that's Dan's, researched the needs of the town, and we have come up with what we thought was the highest and best use. I have notes in here from the affordable housing right up to January 31st of 2023 in their active pipeline. The building's not even on here. 146 rental units, 25% affordable housing, 200 ownership units, 32 rental units. This is great, and I love this, but what I want to speak to this is, if this goes through, which is wonderful, where are all these people going to go? Where are they going to hang out? Where are they going to come together as a community if we build this? The thing up in Lunenburg Road, when that goes through, where are all those people going to go with their kids to hang and play out? This is why we looked at this area, keeping it within a recreational area as the town grows would be a place for them to go.
There's nobody on the screen. You're up.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Stephanie Stanton. I live at 942 Main Street, and with all due respect to the committee members, thank you for your work and all the time that you've put into this. So I just, in real nutshell, it does all come down to the legal, Kate working with town council, and that's the nuts and bolts of, I think. So, but just for the record, I am very much in favor of the using it as housing. And I could go on as to reasons why. I think I probably will do that in the future.
Right.
But for now, I just want to let, for the record, know that I'm.
Thank you, Stephanie, I appreciate it.
We need affordable housing.
Thanks, Stephanie. And I want to be very clear, like, to Sherry's point, they came seeking support for an engineering study. This isn't where we're going to debate whether it's a pavilion, whether it's a housing, or where the housing goes and when it goes there. So, I just want to be very clear, like, I don't want anyone to say, why did this meeting not go in one direction or another? This was an information meeting, which was really helpful for us to get it. I appreciate the public comment. We're going to ask Victoria to be I'm going to ask Victoria to be the last one, unless there's any, you've all had a chance. If you want to say something, you've had a chance to get up. George, if you want to, now's your time. George will be the last one, unless there's anybody else. All right, so we're going to call it, and if you could do it as concisely as humanly possible, because believe it or not, you were the third thing on our agenda, and there's a lot more. So we'll go Victoria, and then George.
So I just wanted to fact check a couple of things that were said
Name
tonight.
and address.
Victoria Petraka, 67 Woodland
I don't know, they tell me, Jason tells me, I remind people all the time, so.
So the memorial school is in the active, it's in the pipeline. It's on page 2. So I just heard.
We're also, I just want to be a debate.
No, it's not a debate. I just want to get the facts straight. So it is listed on page 2. It's in the housing production plan that was approved by the select board, planning board, and the state. And so it definitely is documented as future senior, mobility impaired, and veterans housing. AUC comes up all the time, if I had a dime for every time.
We could buy AUC.
We could buy
AUC.
So,
let's do that.
Yeah, right, yeah.
we would love to work with, when I say we, I mean the Affordable Housing Trust has toured AUC. We have made countless efforts to work with AUC. So we are really in favor of AUC. We don't own it. It's private property. Can't wave a magic wand and make it happen. So, but this is a small project. It's what we would call an infill project, and it's a small number of units. And it is town-owned, and that makes a substantial difference. The folks that are on that wait list that I described, they are not candidates for the 40R. They are not candidates for the majority of affordable housing. The price point at Bigelow Gardens is very important to look at, and the fact that the town owns this site is critical to addressing that wait list. Those are people who will not find units at AUC or at a future project in North Lancaster. It is simply, although affordable, it is priced at what we call 80% area median income. That's a stretch. That is too much. They can't do it. So it's a small project, and it fills an important need in our town. So there's a difference when we say affordable housing. It's not one big mass of housing. There are some really critical differences in those pro formas and in those cash flows.
And I can tell you all this for a fact, that if you have any questions about affordable housing, she will sit with you for as long as you'd like and answer every question possible.
Thank you.
Thanks, Victoria, appreciate it. All right, closing us out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. George Franz, 13 Highfield Drive. I am definitely an ally of affordable housing. You all know it.
Yeah.
What we're dealing with here is two questions. There's a question of the funding, the engineering study, and there's the legal question of the deed restriction. Those are the only two things that we really need to deal with at this point. Once we have those two items ironed out, then all the supporters of all the different uses pour forth and be eloquent and move to the best and highest use. But right now, we've got two things: deed restriction and fund the engineering study. Thank you.
Perfect way to close it out. Thank you. Oh, boy.
I have a question.
Not a debate. Okay, yeah.
It's not a debate, it's a question, because if I'm gonna say you, meaning the board, not you personally, Steve. To follow through with the deed restriction, how do we do that? I know you said we should work with Kate, so we stay as a board and just continue to work with her to understand the restrictions. I just wanna know like how, because obviously it's a issue, so.
Yeah, so if we voted, which I have a sneaky suspicion we will, to give her, and to be very clear, she's the town administrator, she can talk to town council anytime she wants to, but what we're envisioning is that this will require more hours than a normal inquiry, and so
happy to do.
So, no, not for you, for town council. They're also happy to do it, because they get paid.
But I mean, can we be,
But my point is, the reason, I want to be clear that when we vote to give her permission to talk to town council about this, if you see later that we didn't vote to give her town permission, it is not, I don't want anyone to read anything into this. This project's really important, which means it's gonna require more time with town council, more hours, more billable hours, more of a bill to us, but it's an important project and important information to gather. So the reason why I'm gonna ask for a vote to give her that is because it goes a little bit above every day asking town council questions. So now.
I think you missed I don't think I asked the question right, okay.
I just realized I forgot to clarify that earlier.
The answer to the question is that, and I talked earlier about this with the chair, is if you can get me all of the documentation that you have, anything that you think is relevant. I also have that from various other sources. I will certainly connect with Heather. I've connected with Victoria, and I'm going to send that along, and then council uses that, and then more resources that are at their disposal. And essentially the question that we will ask is, could you outline the use restrictions once and for all? Could you, basically clear the path forward for us? Meaning, if something other than recreation were to be proposed, what would have to happen to make that a legal entity, if it's at all possible? And how many layers of the onion does that peel back? And if so, what is the cost, both in time and in dollars, to do that? And then that opinion will come to the board, and that would inform a bigger discussion.
And so, yeah, all the information, that doesn't get them starting from block one, it gets them much further down the road. I want to make sure the folks understand, Kate just brought up a really good point. We want to ask council while they're doing this, as many sort of if-then statements as possible. And I know a lot of you spoke to not trying to go around the restrictions and things. First, we need to clarify what the restrictions are, but it's incumbent on us to learn the if-then statements, right? That doesn't mean we're going to do them, but while they're in it, it's frankly more efficient and less expensive if they provide us all that information then, rather than us coming back to them in 3 months and saying, hey, by the way, if we decided to do this, what would it be? So I just want anybody watching or in this room, it doesn't, just because we're asking the questions, it only means we want information, which is what this should frankly be all about, so.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things in my preliminary conversation, and this was pretty much right after I started, because I believe, I don't know if it was your group or the group before was talking to my predecessor and essentially was saying, what will it cost to change, if there's a restriction, to change that restriction or lift that restriction? And that may be cost prohibitive for some. It may be, well, sure, you can do anything, but it would take 10 years and $300,000. And so the thought is, well, does that detract from an already viable option? Does it add to housing? So I think just bringing forward to the board and the community, here's what can happen, here's what can't happen, and here are the steps to sort of explore, option B or option A, and it's really then a discussion about, how many years and how much money do we want to spend, do we have, what's feasible.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, with all that being said, is there a motion from one of my colleagues to ask Kate to work with town council to tackle everything we just talked about?
I would like to make a motion to approve Kate to work with town council to fully understand the opportunity for the Memorial School with respect to restrictions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Good.
So Kate,
So close. So close.
through the chair.
Yes.
We talked about how this has to be a comprehensive ask, and that there's a lot of what ifs, if thens.
Yeah.
Town council is very good. Do you want to get like a baseline from us so we know what we're getting into? Because I could see this as a legal.
A baseline of what?
Well, just as cost, because I support this. We need to do the research. It's time we commit to this research. It also could be, I could see this going on for a long time. So can we get a report back as far as just cost and time? I think we should do it. I'm not.
Well, so you want an estimate on how much it's gonna cost us to do the thing that we just said was really important to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, just because having been involved in difficult deeds in the past, it
Is
could be.
there a number at which you would stop?
No, I just think we need to inform the public, and I'm committed to it.
Right.
So I am committed to
For
do
the
it.
record, that's why I'm bringing it forward.
Right.
Because I wasn't going to expend dollars on legal funds
I
without
understand
having an open conversation. So
Right.
I know that I've almost been here a year, but anything else that was going to be outside of the scope, I've always brought forward.
Yeah, no, you've been great about
So I
that.
don't think you have to ask because it's coming. You're gonna see it.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand that. I think when we say commit to it, I expect we're looking at certainly in excess of $20,000 probably of legal, my guess.
I don't.
would hope not.
Yeah, let's not,
But-
I don't wanna, let's.
Well, that's-
So,
let's just
folks,
know.
we're not putting numbers on things.
Well, so,
So, do you have an amendment to the or?
no, I was
okay.
just, in the discussion, I was saying that, it's
I
a
will bring
commitment. We
something
have to be
back.
prepared to commit.
I will bring something back to the meeting next time that has sort of, here's what we
A range.
consider the cost to the answer for these questions.
I think it's nice of you to do. I would rather us focus our time and energy on getting the resources, getting the information to town council so they can actually do the work.
Yeah. Oftentimes we have.
Agreed.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I think it's in the best interest of every Lancaster resident to understand what our options are. And let's just, figure this out and be done with it. And that's gonna take a little bit of research, and we will all be the better for it. Thank you.
I think we're
Thank
all,
you.
all
Okay.
committed to doing it, yeah.
All right. All those in favor? Jason?
Aye.
Felix?
Aye.
Stephen, aye. 300. We'll be back in touch.
We'll follow up.
Yes.
Thank you.
You guys do all kinds of data dump, and then we'll get rolling. Yeah, awesome.
But it doesn't have to be a dump necessarily.
Organized, yeah. All right, I'm gonna ask my colleagues.
Transfer
for
of
a
knowledge.
Do you want it in paper form?
Going to,
Thumb drive would be awesome.
we're gonna go in recess for 5 minutes. We'll resume at 8:25. I've asked Chief Moody to join us to discuss, give everyone a refresher relative to town staff, committee and board members, and their access and rights to access private property. This came as a result of a lot of issues that cropped up of late, and I just thought it was a productive reminder to remind citizens what their rights are, and to remind those watching what town officials can and or are not allowed to do. So at this point, I will turn it over to our Chief of Police, Everett Moody. Take it away, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just start off by saying thank you to all our individual board and committee members and our town staff for all you do for Lancaster. The saying, "It takes a village," comes to mind when thinking how many people it takes working together to have a successful town government. Tonight's meeting is a reminder how lucky Lancaster is to have so many willing to help. Keeping that in mind, I wanted to take a moment and make sure that our board members understood what we as an extension of government can and cannot do in regarding site inspections and home visits. I think it's important that we guide them to help set them up and our community up for success. And I'd be happy to meet individually with any boards to conduct more in-depth sessions or answer any questions that might arise. But tonight I just want to take a moment and explain the limitations placed on government when it comes to entering private property. Both the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution and Article 14 of the Massachusetts Constitution protect people from unreasonable search and seizure of the government. Both are commonly associated with police more than any other form of government, but they apply equally to all forms of government. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court has reinforced the importance of constitutional protections time and time again. So how do we as boards conduct the necessary inspections to meet the needs of both the boards and our residents? I can tell you that consent is always the preferred method. Consent comes from someone who legally owns the property or who has access to it. We can observe the property from public property or on a butter's property where you have consent. We can obtain an administrative warrant or in exigent or emergency situations. Without using one of these methods, any information gathered is likely to be thrown out in court, and the town becomes liable, both civilly and potentially criminally. So I know it come up in recent weeks. Some residents were inquiring about trespassing, more specifically about board members entering property without permission, and what they could or could not do. And basically, absent a warrant, consent, or emergency reason, you do not have to let a board member onto your property or into your home. This would include town assessors, but I want the residents to understand that the board members only request the inspection to be as fair and accurate as possible. If an assessor is denied entrance, property owners give up some rights to the ability to challenge the assessed value. Likewise, if board members are denied access that are required to issue permits for safety inspections, it is likely those permits would not be issued or move forward in the process. I'd just like to stress the importance for our residents and our board members. We must work together to have an efficient, safe, and effective process. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions from my fellow board members? Hearing none?
Nope.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Everett. Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Very welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Now, even more public comment. We now have this meeting's public comment period. I assume everyone heard my admonitions previously this evening, so just remind folks, this is an opportunity for the public to air their concerns, but do so in a constructive manner without attacking anybody. There are no personnel matters to be discussed, no complaints, criticism directed at staff will be tolerated. Staff or volunteers will be tolerated, and just want folks to offer their comments in a pleasant and productive way. So, go with who's in the room first. Ralph.
Ralph Gifford, 861 George Hill Road. I had emailed an invitation to the Black History Month concert. Actually, it's concert, it's international food tasting, there's artwork from children, there's gonna be even some children that'll be dancing. Anyway, that's this Saturday evening, 6 p.m. Would any of you like to give a greeting there?
If I can make it, yes. And I think I responded to you that I'm hoping
did.
to, yeah.
Yes. We would be thrilled.
Copy that. Okay, thank you very
Well,
much.
just let me know.
I will let you know. Yep.
What we'll do is, if you think so, I'll put a generic, selectman greeting in the program.
Yep.
And we'll hold it open.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, do that.
plan on
Yeah,
joining you
yeah,
as well,
perfect.
so.
Pardon me?
I plan on joining you as well,
Yes.
as you know.
Thank you.
So, yep.
Perfect, thanks, Ralph, appreciate it. And I encourage folks to go, yes.
Ralph, just pro tip, you should probably tell them where it is.
Yeah, where it is.
It is at the College Church, 337 Main Street. The concert starts at 6 p.m. Saturday evening. That's the 11th, this coming Saturday. The art exhibition viewing starts at 5:30.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ralph, appreciate it. All right. Anybody else in the room? Nobody else? Anybody on the screen? Okay, public comment period has come to a close. Sounds good. Town administrator report. Town administrator, please report.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as far as recruitment and staffing, we have an opening for the assistant town clerk, and so I had recently been looking at that job description and speaking with Mandy Cannon, who is our town clerk. There's a need to really have some role related to public information and oversight of the website, et cetera. And so we have collectively updated that job description and sent it to the union. That is a union position. And so I'm awaiting to hear back. And once I hear from the union, I will include that in an upcoming meeting so you all can review it. Not looking for any change in pay or hours, et cetera, but I do think that having somebody that has some technical capabilities and website, social media, et cetera, would be very helpful.
Sounds good. Uh-oh.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to quickly say how grateful I am for Mandy's work. She's done an amazing job, and the support that we can get her in this role would be very much welcome. Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you. I thank you.
Well, and on that end, review of open board and committee positions, that was in your packet on pages 57 through 59. And Mandy and Kathy Rocco did all of that work in looking up people's terms, what positions are open, checking with all of the relevant department heads or chairs of those boards and committees to make sure that that information is accurate. And so we will start putting that out there, certainly for the positions that are appointed by the select board. And certainly I am assuming folks know what elections are coming up and seats for that. So that, and there really aren't too many other pertinent department updates at this time, although we are, well, knee-deep in budget season here.
Oh, you know how I know we're knee-deep in budget season? It's like my own Bible. I just carry it around with me all the time. This fantastic 140-some-odd, 30-some-odd page budget book, which is the greatest. It's 130 pages on the nose. Greatest budget book I've ever seen in my life. Okay. I'm not overselling it. I swear to God. We should sell it. We'll make a lot of money for the town. All right. So
I
it
did
is
take
important.
a picture of it.
Of course you did. The positions available in town is important to get folks. We know we make it seem so effortless and fun, but we do need folks to volunteer to join us in this fun, and there's an awful lot of opportunities. So we thank folks for pulling all that together.
Yeah, this is a great document. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you for doing this. Can we put, and it may even be there, on the openings, the volunteer openings, the recruitment page? Yes.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm working on an online submission card.
Oh, nice.
Where persons could answer some questions and submit it that way instead of making them come in or email. Some people don't know which board to email or which person to email, so.
And some of them, we used to call it a talent bank, but sometimes people don't even know what they want to, so if they, like that little resume, and just try to,
Maybe the first order
Shoehorn
of
them
business
in.
for whomever it is that may want the assistant
assistant
town
town
clerk
clerk,
slash
yes,
public information.
All right. Next item is administration, budget, and policy. We have both discussion and debrief of special town meeting from January 28th and budget updates, including the budget review. I'm gonna ask maybe that we do the debrief and then we move through the rest of the agenda, and if we have time for a substantive conversation on the budget, we do. If not, that we move it to another meeting. Also, not having Jason in the room. Is everyone okay if we?
it'd be great, because I didn't bring my book with me.
Okay, all right, so discussion and debrief of special town meeting. Before we start, I will renew my thanks to everybody who participated on any side of the issue, but all the volunteers and all of the staff who put so much time and energy, not just that day, but in the time since we received the petition calling for the meeting, to plan and address some of the concerns from November and really tackle it in a thoughtful, effective way. I have only heard positive feedback from folks about the experience of attending the meeting, and so I'm grateful. And I know we've received information from the Sterling-Lancaster TV, our dear friends, about, and I know you have that, and you'll probably take it off for us, every linear inch of extra cords and everything that they needed is quite descriptive to tell you exactly all the work that went into it. But I thought it showed the best of us and the opportunity that it provided us as a community. So I yield to you if you have a report on it.
What I have is select person Allison asked for some information regarding the historical numbers. So I provided that as a memo in your book. And I won't go through the big laundry list of things, but it's an understatement to say it was an all hands on deck, and Sterling-Lancaster television was just phenomenal. Very great to work with, can-do attitude. They were there with us, all Friday evening getting set up. And I have to say, it was a lot of the staff, that coming from, not close places, and we got there early, and we were all there, and it was a great team building exercise. So I thank you to police, fire. You guys were excellent. There was tons of volunteers that came even just at the last minute to help, tell people where to park their cars. Dave Millette gets a shout out from me because he relieved me from the orange vest duty so that I could not wear sweatpants to town meetings. So I will owe him big for that one. So yeah, a lot of great things that happened.
Awesome. Board members?
I would also like to thank everybody. I was very impressed. I was particularly impressed. I think everybody gets kudos, but to have your first act fresh on the job, from Mandy Cannon as your first town meeting, to be a big town meeting, great job, and it was great. We learned. I don't. And I was by our ballot keepers, the police department. Was. That was quite impressive. It was, as Steve said, no matter where you stood on it, it was very well organized.
Jason?
Yeah, so I like to say that the town meeting is a lot like an NFL offensive line. Their name is only called when there's a penalty. In the previous town meeting, I felt like there was a lot to be discussed. In this town meeting, there was nothing. There was nothing to talk about. Logistically, it came across, I would go as far as to say perfect. And I think that's wonderful. Learning from our previous situation and growing from that as a town, I think we have a lot to be proud of. That said, I think as a select board, we have an opportunity to grow also. And I think I mentioned this to Kate. I would like to, I don't know if this is a motion or to talk about, but to have some sort of ranked choice ballot on the upcoming election, which would allow voting residents to vote on which day of the week they would like to have the town meeting. I can appreciate the totality of residents who each have a preference on date, but I think the goal in Lancaster is to find the day that works for the majority of residents. So we don't need to debate that today. That is my intent, is to have some sort of ranked choice voting for the upcoming election where residents can decide as the days of the week that are best for them. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that is a,
Can you indulge me on that?
I
Because I knew
sure-
he was gonna do
I
that.
think it's a fantastic idea, but now I'm gonna indulge Kate, who may tell you it's terrible.
No.
No, I'm kidding.
As a matter of fact, I have created what I hope to be a mock ranked ballot.
So, do you want,
So basically, it would be a completely separate ballot that would be provided to those who come in to vote on the second Monday in May, likely a different color. And effectively with ranked choice voting is people have an opportunity to select one in each column. And so the idea would be that if 50% of the people who vote choose weekday evening 5 p.m. start as their number one choice, and 50% choose Saturday morning at 10 a.m. start as their number one choice, you'll see that those come out as, sort of even at the end. So it takes into account who's voting second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. I made up these questions on the side. They could be other questions. I made them just about town meeting, but they certainly don't need to be about town meeting. I guess the thought would be, if we're going to be asking questions of people in this form and we're going to have this ballot, why not ask questions that we would like the answers to? I mean, it's only as good as the people who show up to vote and choose to participate in the second ballot, but I think it can't hurt. So these are obviously able to be changed to whatever the board chooses to put in there, but I think one of the things that I would like to see is some communities are going to multi-day town meetings. I realize that's difficult, I know, and no one wants to, I realize that that's difficult because it ties up the building, it ties up the staff, but people can plan to know that they're gonna be there 2.5 or 3 hours, and then they're leaving and coming back. So it might be a question that's worth asking. You never know.
I totally hear that. I would, so I'm a big believer, I love ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is voting allows your voice to be heard. Ranked choice voting allows your voice to be heard really loudly. Because say every one of those options had 10 votes. And then the first one, on the second choice, 12 people voted that second choice and 8 the rest of them. That immediately starts taking the lead. And it ranks it up and gives you, I may not get my first choice, but I'm okay with my second choice or my third choice. And so that all feeds up into the process and gives folks more of a sense at the end that their voice was heard and their opinion listened to. Keep in mind, this is a non-binding vote, that it would be to seek people's opinions, not necessarily the direct policy. But I do think it'd be interesting to survey the community in a way like this that gives us some good data points on which to hang our proverbial hats. And so I think, questions down the side that ask other not necessarily timing related questions, I think make a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I just took Jason's idea and tried to put it to paper, so hopefully
Well done.
it
Both of you.
represents something.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right.
So Steve, I just want to, like you, I like ranked choice voting. I was sad when it did not pass at our statewide, but we can do it here Lancaster-wide, right? And the questions that you've thought out so far are very good. Thank you for it, that this is non-binding, because certainly it's, just to remind people that right now we have a bylaw that dictates the day of town meeting and so on, so it's not going to change it immediately. We would require a bylaw change should we decide to do that.
Yes, for the annual town meeting. Yeah.
For the annual, yes.
Which brings us to the next
Yes,
Nice segue.
item.
indeed.
So the bylaw does stipulate that the first Monday in May is annual town meeting unless by a vote of the majority of the board, another date is chosen, as long as that town meeting business is completed by the 30th of June. And the reason that's important for this year is because Sterling's town meeting has already been called for that first Monday in May. And I was hopeful that we would be able to have something similar in setup as we had for the special town meeting, particularly the socially distanced room or something similar to that. And was told, that we would have the ability to have half as much as we had because the Sterling-Lancaster community television folks would have to be half in Sterling, half in Lancaster. And given the amount of staff time and volunteers, et cetera, I just don't think we would have as great of a product if we cut it in half. And I anticipate, unless something changes, that there might be some high interest articles, particularly the budget, so I'd like to be prepared for that.
Agreed.
And so Sterling-Lancaster Television has asked if Wednesday, the first Wednesday would be an all right day. That allows them to break down Sterling's meeting rooms, et cetera, Tuesday, and then gives them time to transport that over to Lancaster and then set that up.
It took them like 10 hours or something
Yes.
to set up.
Yeah.
For a 2-hour meeting. The annual town meeting will not be a 2-hour meeting, but still
And
it's
11
an awful lot of work.
people to run the equipment.
They asked me about that at the special, and
Yeah.
I have no objection to that, because I think their participation not only helps the people in the space who are showing up to be a legislator for Lancaster, but it helps the overall community at large who can watch from home and absorb what's happening, can hear comments from all different rooms. Those people can be heard, et cetera. So I would have no problem with us. Are you asking us to schedule it now, or are you just asking us to consider it?
Yeah, I would be asking you to schedule it now, consistent with the calendar.
Well, that's next. Set date and time.
Because it's a break from the norm, and so I would obviously want to work with the school and hopefully button up that date sooner than later.
Is there a motion to move the annual town meeting to Wednesday, May the 4th? Yes?
I'll make that motion for some,
May the 4th be with you? It's Star Wars Day?
yes, I'll make that motion, may I?
Well, let's make sure we have the date right.
Just a minute, yeah. It is May the 3rd.
Ah, really?
Yeah,
Are you sure?
Wednesday, May 3rd.
Hold
The
on.
first is Monday.
I'll
Then
be.
after
Look at you.
1 comes
You
2,
got a calendar
and
just like
after
mine.
2 comes 3.
All right, so May the 3rd.
So I'll offer the motion because I'd like to have some discussion.
So you make the motion
I made the motion to set the date for annual town meeting for Wednesday, May 3rd.
Is there a second, Mr. Allison?
I will not be second.
You will not second. Oh, I will second for the purpose of discussion.
Okay. The discussion that I was going to have is a little departure from the date I'm flexible on. One of the things that I think was the highlight of COVID was our outdoor...
Highlight of COVID?
I know, how can you say these things? Was our outdoor town meeting. It really offered opportunities for, that we held at the Bolton Fairgrounds. They were well attended, and it offered social distancing and a lot of room for people. There were some disadvantages. Families brought their kids. It was an excellent setup, and everybody really rose to the occasion. And there was a lot of trepidation about how to do that. there was some talk about if we could do that again. Because the only downside I heard about this last town meeting was that some people were concerned about the pandemic, which is over, I understand that.
No, it's not.
But that this is a way to solve that and still encourage the participation of the families and so on. I thought it was a real highlight, and those town meetings went very well. I didn't know if we would
I would say a real highlight.
entertain revisiting
Yeah.
that model
So,
on Wednesday, the 3rd, if need be.
well, I would say a real highlight of that special town meeting was the social distance room where we gave people their own entrance, their own moderator, their own police officer. Seats were 10 feet apart. I mean, we spent
Definitely a lot of
We spent a
effort,
lot,
yeah.
we spent a lot of time on the phone with the Attorney General's office, the Mass Office of Disabilities, to make sure we accommodated folks. And I will say the numbers showing up are 3 times what showed up at the largest outdoor.
Of course, because we didn't have, that wasn't this big issue, but I'm just saying that was a very successful, it's not, this is combining the best of. So Wednesday was a fine, and we just had such wonderful response at those outdoor town meetings, a lot of clamor, and some of the logistics that we had to do, there were still people who were concerned about accessibility. And there would be, even in an outdoor town meeting, there would be accessibility
like
issues.
people who don't have a car.
Right, so we had to accommodate those. There's no perfect, as you point out, there's no perfect system, but that is something that I think would be good to consider.
Okay. I think the proof is in the pudding on numbers.
It was driven by an issue, obviously.
Well, 853 people came in November, 960 people came in January. The 2 outdoor ones, was there one March 22 outdoors? I don't think so. Was it?
I don't think that was because.
No, that was inside.
Right, I don't think that's a virtue of where we had it. It's a virtue of the interest of the rezoning article.
Well, I don't like to ascribe motives to people, but they were much smaller crowds.
Yes, they were.
So
Agreed.
I feel like that's a solution in search of a problem, but we could certainly discuss it. At this point, we're just asking for a date, yes? But a date and ability to work with the school to make this happen.
Right, I mean, if it's not at the school, then
Then you don't work with
I
the
don't
school.
have to work with the school.
Right.
You may want to talk to SLC TV about that meeting too, the outdoor one, which they also did.
I mean,
And they did a great job there as well, and other people. Staff is different, but it just, and we had bumps there too. Chief Moody will talk about some of the first night, some of the problems with the lighting and the clickers and so on. The first meeting, the second one was much smoother.
I guess my point is we found a way to do it smoothly under this format. Why would we not go to the thing that worked perfectly?
Just to try to accommodate what people found was a very popular event that people could bring kids to, and they could still distance. I think it started off with
There was childcare at the school.
I understand that. I meant they participated in the cars. But
Okay, well, there's a motion and a second on moving the date.
So may I discuss?
Yes, you may. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not for this motion because I'd like one more meeting to hear from residents about not being able to have it on the Monday as the bylaw states. So I would just say let's table this till next meeting.
You want to hear from, you're just asking residents to communicate to us in some way, shape, or form about a Monday versus a Wednesday?
That's right. I think there was a major point made, even by our Reverend Select Board Member Turner, that we have a bylaw that says Monday is the day. So we're talking about moving into Wednesday. I think that unless there's a pressing need to kind of make the decision right now, let's hear from residents and give them about 2 weeks, I guess, until the next meeting to hear what they have to say.
Okay.
I'm fine with that if you.
So our bylaw, to be very clear, our bylaw says the first Monday unless the majority of the board votes to move it. So it's not just first Monday, it's first Monday unless we decide to move it. For a compelling reason, which I think access for voters in the town meeting is a compelling reason. But if you wish to,
No, I think the current format is the correct format.
we can't do that format on that day.
It's an opportunity to get feedback, that's all.
Right, but we can't do that format on that day is the point. Sterling
For
TV,
example, what I mean is, it could be Wednesday, it could be Thursday, it could be Friday, it could be Saturday, right? We've got all of those choices other than that Monday, correct?
Yes.
yes. I guess so, okay.
Unless this is time sensitive. If this is time sensitive and we need to make a decision.
Well, at some point, I guess my point is at some point it will be, and I'll ask Kate if it is now, but at some point it will be. And I guess my question is, what if 8 people reach out and 3 say Thursday's great, and 2 say Wednesday, and 1 says Friday, and 2 say Saturday? Like, at some point, that's why we're here.
Yeah, we'll talk about it, we'll have a conversation.
Okay, well
But if we decide right now, we'll have not had an opportunity to receive feedback from this.
Okay, well, all right, I totally hear that. Now I'm gonna turn to Kate. Is there a,
So I was trying to pull up the,
Lila?
no, I was trying to pull up the calendar that I
that you put in here?
had
This
provided.
calendar?
Correct, because it's already a pretty truncated schedule as far as if you don't have a date set for town meeting, which is fine, but if you don't set that until on or around the 27th, then you certainly can't open the warrant,
Right, and we're supposed to open the warrant at the next meeting on the 13th.
which is fine, but that provides a smaller window for people to get warrant articles in, and I don't know how many citizen petitions you generally get, but I know the best practice is to allow the warrant to be open for at least a month, if not, I mean, arguably, most do 6 to 8 weeks, so that citizens can have conversations with elected officials or with town staff to formulate their warrant article to then bring forward. So, that would be the only thing, and if there isn't, I haven't heard of anybody that's putting forward a citizen's petition, but again, this will be my first annual.
The planning board too might have articles or
They already
something.
told us today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite as worried about the town boards and committees, because I think that they're sort of, they understand when they have to get all that in.
So in the spirit of compromise, we're meeting on the 13th, correct? Is that,
We are, in theory, for a very short meeting, only to open the town meeting warrant.
well, would that give us, could we do both of those? Finalize the date on the 13th? That gives a week. For feedback.
You have to ask Jason whether that gives enough time for feedback.
Jason, does that, the 13th, offer enough time for people to get some thoughts back?
So what I'm hearing is that it is time sensitive and that we should maybe consider making a decision tonight with the information we have. And it sounds like Wednesday's probably the best choice that we have for tonight. So I guess I'm willing to change my mind based on the information that's given.
Okay.
I mean, it can definitely wait and just have that, have the different meeting. There was nothing that was happening between now and the 13th, other than I was gonna contact the school, which I can still do.
Right.
And I can ask about availability for that whole week.
Well, why don't I ask, no, did you do the motion? To move it?
Yes.
Ask you to withdraw your motion, and then we will set a date on the 13th, come heck or high water.
I think it's important, yes, I think it's important to note, I think the spirit of it was having, and I don't understand exactly the logic, to having it the week before election.
Yeah, that always confused me, but
I think it should be the other way around.
I
but-
do too. It's
But
always
we
very
did write
interesting.
the bylaw.
One group of people pass a budget, then hand it over to a whole new group of people who got elected a week later. But that's a whole other kettle of fish.
I
So,
would just say that within that week, but yes, the bylaw and tradition does
Yeah.
state the first, so.
so if you
I will
withdraw your
withdraw.
motion,
I will withdraw my
then
motion.
we
You
will.
had seconded it.
You could call it.
So why don't you just
for
vote it
20
Oh, yeah, sure. What?
You should call it before Sterling, though, for the following year.
Yeah, we're gonna put the date for the town meeting in June
it's our
for
bylaw,
next
come
year.
on.
Yeah. But don't anyone from Sterling watching tell anybody. All right, let's just vote it down then. All opposed indicate by saying no.
No.
No?
No.
Okay, so that fails. And we will take it back up on the 13th.
Okay. Do you
and,
have a time?
For our meeting on the 13th? No, but we will get there.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have to set that, because that is going to be a very quick, I believe, all Zoom meeting, yes?
Yes, I'm.
You're on vacation.
Gonna be on
She's like,
vacation, so if you could just make.
Yes, but I do think you should definitely talk to the school and do all the.
I will
sort
do
of-
all of that, yeah.
And check on a number, like just see what their schedule is that week and stuff. Okay.
Will do.
And the
All
boat with you. It's a great event.
It is a fantastic event, yeah. Okay, next item up for bid. Where are we now? Discuss review potential warrant articles. Do you want to do that now or do that? When do you want to do that? Is that next?
Well, so the idea would be regardless of, is the calendar that's outlined there something that the board can work within?
I believe
Because
so.
It is tight, but it allows, number one, for the budget to be finalized and
Yeah.
at least, not only posted online, but have some printed copies
Mm-hmm.
available to folks. And the other is to actually print and
Yes.
mail the warrant to
That's what I like.
households,
It didn't-
because,
yeah, we get back to the way we used to do where people got it mailed to their house.
sure, yeah.
So that to me, because that schedule allows for that.
That schedule allows for
That
it.
I think is really important. So I think we can, if you say we can make it work, if we pick a date next Monday,
Yep.
open the warrant, let's do that and then keep rolling. Do you guys agree? Disagree? Somewhere in between? Do
I
one
think
of you
it's,
agree?
I think it's, I think it's a great schedule. I agree with you that it's tight. I would like to make sure that on the 24th, we have plenty of time and patience. The 24th is the select
27th.
board,
Oh, 24th.
no, the select
Oh, the
board
joint,
FinCom
yeah.
joint meeting, because there
That's got a
are,
question mark.
Right, that's because I said,
we picked a date.
is that a good day?
Yeah.
But,
So I'm-
and we can have time, I don't know about patience.
Yes. Well, so I hope and expect we'll have lots of budget questions, and sort of that's the real tough meeting as I see
Yeah.
it. Whenever it may land, the 24th,
Yeah.
question mark is okay
Yeah,
for me.
Yeah.
but
No, I
it's all
agree.
the time.
That's, and Alex is talking about a joint meeting between the finance committee and the select board, as we did not long ago to review budget articles. So this will be sort of
It will be more informed now that we have the books.
it'll be the meeting of all meetings about the budget. But it shouldn't be, to be quite honest, I don't know, there won't be much left up to debate or, I mean, we'll be discussing it in great depth and we're gonna have to have a conversation about where that leaves us money-wise and override-wise, et cetera. But it's not like we're reopening every kettle of fish and re-examining all line items.
So personally, I mean, we can get into the grist of that about the agenda, but I'd like to see whatever people want to talk about, I'd like to see that, but budget related.
Yeah, I definitely don't want a whatever people want to talk about meeting. I
Okay.
don't like those at all. I'd like there to be an agenda and go through it, yeah.
Obviously, it's going to be budget. Just as a point of information, I think on the 27th, again, that's a fine date for me if we choose to go there, no question mark.
We already chose that one. We already
Yeah,
voted on
that's
it.
a special, I think, right? Isn't
Yep.
that out of sequence?
That would be a special because
Okay, no, it just needs to say, that's okay, because the 13th
that's,
is
I
a
mean, that's
special.
on the notice, so I think we're good.
Oh, I know,
Yeah.
just, it's just a.
Thank you, awesome, thank you.
slip.
What else?
No, the others looked good.
Okay, great.
So perhaps
with-
if the 24th is good, you could reach out chair to chair
Chair.
of finance? I mean, I'm gonna be going to their meeting tomorrow, and I do think they might be taking a preliminary look. Oh, the
If the chair is there.
That's a
is
Fri-
there.
That's
The
a
chair
Friday
is there.
That's a Friday.
of
No,
What
it's
day
a,
is it?
oh, it's a Friday.
February 24th is a Friday.
Oh, well, that would not be
Oh, you don't like that?
ideal,
No. But I'm glad to speak to my chair colleague
23rd.
offline and we can look at dates. So I'm coming your way, Chair Smiley. You've now been warned.
Run and hide.
We will
She's not unmuting.
I know. Why, okay. All right, anything else?
No.
All right.
So you'll set a date then for that.
Yes, so Sue Smiley and I will work on a date for the joint meeting.
I don't even know why I would have said the 24th. I'm not even here. Maybe that was.
But you wanted to have a meeting when we weren't here.
You're smart, you're very smart.
Okay. Next, we received a letter we need to vote as a board to accept the cost of living increases that the Worcester Regional Retirement System has put forth for retirees here in Lancaster who are in that retirement system. We added it to the agenda because it's important to those retirees who work tirelessly for our communities to receive cost of living increases when they're available. But we as a community and as a board have to vote to accept that cost of living increase.
Correct. And
that-
every community, every community's select board
does the same.
is
Well-
pondering the same, and it does not have to be unanimous, but it does have to be a majority.
The majority of the towns?
Of the towns.
or-
The majority of the town, well,
Towns.
both, the majority of the towns
And the majority of the people
and the
voting, yeah.
majority of the board.
Majorities all around.
Voting.
And no, we don't know yet where we are on whether they've tipped the scale on majority or not. But I frankly would like us to be one of the votes in favor of accepting the cost of living increase.
And the retirement system itself, and looks like they are talking about what is it, 2%?
2%.
Yeah.
Yep.
As opposed to some of the other things that we have, okay.
Well,
So
yeah,
we're asked to.
and it's not a percentage that we can't say, we'd like to do 1.5 or 3.
No, but
just
there were
accept
other
it.
recommendations from others, but we're.
So I move to accept the increase in
Thank you.
retirement of 2%.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there a
Being
second?
asked to endorse.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Jason?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Steve? Aye. And we thank those retirees for their service.
You will, so that is likely to be an adjustment that would be in the final.
Final budget book. Sounds good. Thank you. Speaking of being thankful for people, I thought we did this Joan Richards.
We did.
Okay.
Well,
So
we
we're
didn't
still
formally,
thankful for her.
I don't think did we formally accept it?
Oh, no, we received the letter.
Not, you received
We
the
received
letter.
But we received a letter thanking her from
Yes.
the commission, but now
Yes.
she formally gave it to us.
Yes. So now it is before us to accept the resignation of Joan Richards as a member.
Offer a motion to formally accept the resignation of Joan Richards as a member of the Historical Commission effective January 27th, 2023.
Second.
All those any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Joan.
May I offer you a motion
Yes, you
to appoint John Sandy Foster as a member of the Historical Commission for a term to expire June 30th, 2025 to fill the unexpired term.
You may.
Second.
All right. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Sounds good. Awesome. As has been discussed, we will have a select board meeting on the 13th and on the 27th.
This actually has a
It
time.
does have a time of 6 p.m. We can change that. And
It's completely up to the
it
I
hasn't
think
been
they're both
noticed yet.
special, but we can.
They are both special, yeah. We're all special.
Do we need to move the time?
I think this is gonna be literally set time for set date for the annual town meeting and open the warrant. So if we do it properly,
And this
this
is
should be brief.
From a scheduling perspective, we
Yeah.
can discuss set up.
We can discuss what?
Well, if we wanna change it, we have to change the 13th meeting now.
If we want to change the time of the 13th meeting, we can do that offline.
we can.
But I have to call it, that's the only
Yeah.
thing.
We have to, we can do it offline, but we have to post it like tomorrow-ish.
I'm
So
flexible.
we can do it, okay, we'll take it offline. Everyone send their suggestions to Kate on start time. Also, I wanna be respectful of Kate and her family and her vacation, so I'm gonna ask you to tell me what might be the
That
good
day's
window.
fine.
That day's fine, okay. All right, we'll stick with 6 o'clock on the 27th.
But anything after that,
We got it.
I'm gone.
Got it. We'll stick with 6 o'clock on the 27th. Ongoing projects and old business, DCAM.
Just, I guess I don't know, I feel like this is like a sandwich of good news, bad news type of thing. So the legislation that was at the special town meeting in March of last year did not pass.
It didn't fail either.
No, not because of anything wrong with the article, but simply because of time with the changing of the guard, basically. So the good news about that is it restarts our clock, which is very helpful. And so what I am hoping to do is to bring forward at May's town meeting another article to just reset the entirety of this one more year in the future. So,
just to remind folks, at that meeting, we were given the opportunity to access the DCAM land if we had sold or leased the property to a developer by December 31st, 2023. The idea would be at this Maytown meeting, whenever it is, that we kick that a full additional year.
yeah.
Yes.
So one of the things that I'm gonna be looking to do is working with Mass Development, which I had said, so let me see, so I've been clear that we need more information about what we're dealing with as far as structural integrity of the buildings and environmental analysis before we can discuss anything with developers about what could take place. So last week, I had sent a request a couple of weeks ago to DCAM to ask them, to ask their council to release the documents they did, the grounds assessment and building assessments that they completed in August of 18. And last week, their council got back and did release those. And so I have a copy of those, and as does Mass Development. So the next step for the town is my office and a couple of folks from Mass Development are going to have a memo of agreement through our two agencies for both planning and bidding assistance. Then I'll bring that forward to the board for hopeful adoption. And then I'm also going to be applying for the fiscal year 24 One-Step Community Growth Grant Program. And that would be used for master planning and archaeological work because we need to do a phase 1 and a phase 2 environmental site analysis. And once we have the results of that, we can then petition to DCAM to release their assessments to the greater public and hopefully put out a bid for developers to come in and then give the town some idea of what they would want to do with it. That's the first step to doing it before we even decide whether we want to either purchase or acquire. And so through Mass Development, we have the ability to do that without very many upfront costs, if any at all, pending, obviously, the grant. So that would be the least expensive way to do things. And I think at this point, given what's in the environmental analysis, we probably can't afford to take on those buildings in the campus because the monthly fees to run that whole thing, including security, are in the $25,000 to $30,000 range. So it's an expensive undertaking. So this is sort of a way to work with the other state agencies, not a workaround, but a work smarter.
Yeah. Sounds good, thank you. All right, we have now come to the end of our agenda. Oh, good to see you. Accepting executive session. So is there a motion to enter executive session? Madam Clerk, could you read the motion?
I can with Steve. I think we have.
I know how to make lemonade when it comes to executive session.
Thank you very much, Ralph.
Steve, I think we need to just offer a motion to table to the next meeting, I guess, the budget updates. Is that right?
I don't think we need to move to table it, but we can if you'd like. I think we can just have it
just on the agenda, so I was just gonna say, okay, so I make a motion to table the overview and review of the draft budget book.
Second.
All those in favor? Jason, Alex,
Aye.
Steve? Aye. Great, thank you. Good catch. Okay. Now,
I'll offer a
executive session.
motion to enter into executive session, not to reconvene in open session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purposes: to discuss collective bargaining session with AFSCME Local 3720, specifically to hear a Level 3 grievance regarding discipline for Member A. Martin, and 3, to discuss strategy with collective bargaining, specifically deliberate regarding the response to grievance filed by AFSCME Local 3720 regarding discipline for Member A. Martin, purpose. 3, to discuss litigation strategy regarding 8 Turner DUA appeal, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the select board.
Is there a second?
No, you gotta read the
Oh, wait,
bylaws.
oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
As
she
an
already said
open
that
meeting
part.
may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position. That's actually just repetitive.
Yeah.
And not to reconvene in open
Yep.
session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Jason? Alex? Steve? Aye. Okay, folks, we are going into executive session. We thank everybody for joining us. We will not be returning. We will see you next week. Maybe different bat time, same bat channel.